Hi. First of all, I want to thank you for the previous chapter of this fanfic. And was Naruto forced to marry Hinata and Temari? If you haven't seen it yet, check out the first chapter on my channel. If you want more seasons, you should show this video the same love. Now, without further ado, enjoy.
Naruto and Hinata finally caught up to Sakura when they saw her buying a basket of apples from a food vendor near the hospital. They both slowed down and hunched over, trying to catch their breath. After Sakura completed her purchase and approached them, Naruto stood back up straight and asked, how is it that you suddenly have more energy than any of us when it concerns Sasuke? Sakura just giggled and replied, Oh, when it's for someone you care about, you can find strength you never knew you had. She then grew a sly smile and said, I'm sure Hinata knows what I'm talking about. Hinata stood up straight and froze. Turning red, she started to stutter words neither of them could decipher. Naruto looked confused and asked Hinata, Are you okay, Hinata-chan? What did she mean by that? Hinata panicked at that and tried to find the right words to say. In the end, Sakura came to her aid even though she found it hilarious and wanted to keep watching them fumble with each other. Just ignore it, Naruto. It's a girl thing and you wouldn't understand, she said, throwing a wink to Hinata when Naruto wasn't looking. Hinata calmed down, although she still threw a slight glare to Sakura for bringing that on her. Sakura, of course, ignored it and started walking towards the hospital. Well, come on, let's not just stand around here talking, she told them before continuing on her way, spring in her step and basket of apples swinging in her hands. Naruto felt like he was still missing something but shrugged it off and grabbed Hinata's hand, yelling, Come on, Hinata-chan, we can't let her get ahead of us again. With that, he ran off, dragging her behind him despite her protests for him to slow down. Reaching the hospital, Sakura went inside to check them in as visitor for Sasuke, while Hinata and Naruto hung back. Hinata took the opportunity to dig her finger into Naruto's side and gently admonish him for dragging her when they could walk normally. Naruto apologized profusely but decided to dig a finger into her side as well, which ended up escalating things. After a minute, that was the scene Sakura returned to after checking them in. She was treated to the sight of Naruto and Hinata both laughing and giggling, trying to tickle the other. Sakura looked on in disbelief, thinking seriously, something is going on with these two. Before today, I would never believe the two of them would even have a meaningful conversation. And here they are, tickling each other. I know Naruto can be a whirlwind, but I didn't expect to see this from Hinata too. She watched for a few more moments before getting annoyed and clearing her throat loudly. When they heard her, they both froze and moved their heads to look at her. She tapped her foot and said, If you two are done flirting, we can go ahead to Sasuke-kun's room. Ignoring their blushes and sputters, she spun around and walked off. The two of them glanced at each other and then they both looked away quickly. Seemingly coming to a decision, they started to head towards where Sasuke was located. However, along the way, Naruto glanced back towards Hinata and, gathering his courage, grabbed Hinata's hand softly with his. Hinata's face flushed even more and she glanced back to him, but he was pointedly facing forward. So instead, she just looked back downwards and squeezed his hand before interlocking their fingers, letting him guide her towards their destination. Slowly, they made their way to Sasuke's room. As they got close, Naruto separated their hands, much to the disappointment of both. Turning the corner, they saw Sakura standing outside of the room, hand outstretched towards the door handle looking nervous. Hearing their footsteps, Sakura turned to them and said with an angry tone, About time. Where have you two been? Naruto gained a tick mark and yelled, Hey, we're here now. You don't gotta bite our heads off. He then winced when Hinata's finger dug into his side and she whispered something about yelling in a hospital. Hinata then bowed lightly and apologized, We're sorry, Sakura. I didn't want to rush through the hospital and disturb the other patients. It's okay, Hinata. I wasn't really mad, Sakura said, worried she upset her. Taking a deep breath, she adjusted the basket on her arm and said, Let's go in, shall we? Seeing both of them nod, she opened the door and stepped through the entrance. Foolish little brother, you're still too weak. You don't have enough hatred to face me. And you know something? You never will. Go away, you don't interest me at the moment. Sitting in his hospital bed with a blank look on his face, These thoughts flew through Sasuke's mind, each word and memory hammering home the helplessness he felt when he fought Itachi again. When he threw everything he had at Itachi, and Itachi just swatted him away like a fly. Like there was never even a moment Sasuke could be a threat to his life. What have I been doing all this time? I've trained for years, never skipping a day of training, devoted my entire life to killing Itachi, and all for nothing. Even after all this time, the gap in our skill isn't any smaller. It might even be larger than ever before, Sasuke thought bitterly. Reminiscing on his fight with Itachi, he was reminded of why Itachi was there in the first place. And when he does finally show his face, it's because he's after Naruto. Why? What does that loser have to do with anything? Why would Itachi ever be interested in him, he thought, feeling a sour taste in his mouth. As if he was being summoned, Sasuke heard the voice of Sakura outside his door, then Naruto's unmistakable yelling. Hearing his voice, Sasuke's anger grew, but he kept it hidden behind his stoic facade. The door then opened and Sakura came in, followed by Naruto and that skittish Hyuga girl always following Naruto around that he couldn't remember the name of. However, he ignored them when they all started talking and asking about how he was. He just kept his gaze on the wall, trying to will them to leave. Sakura just took out a chair and started peeling some apples, humming a small tune. Meanwhile, Naruto bounced between various things, telling about all the stuff he was learning and the mission he had gone on. He would go from yelling something to the top of his lungs, to whispering something in a soft voice to the Hyuga girl, who would blush but reply back in a voice he couldn't quite hear. All of it was grating to Sasuke's ears though. Each moment, each voice, soft or loud, increased the pounding in his head, made him grit his teeth and clench the bedsheets harder. As he heard Naruto laugh at something, images flew through his head. The time when Naruto saved him from Orochimaru's snake in the Forest of Death. Naruto summoning Gamabunta and fighting a fully possessed Gaara, when Sasuke couldn't even touch him. Sakura assuming he saved her when it was really Naruto. Itachi ignoring him in favor of chasing after Naruto. What does he have? Why does he keep getting stronger? I don't understand. I have all the talent and all the drive, so I should be better than him. And yet, he's getting stronger at a pace that I never have, Sasuke thought, each word driving him further into jealousy and anger. His curse mark began to throb painfully and he winced at the sensation. However, with that pain, came a moment of clarity, almost like it was whispered to him, beat him. With that thought in his mind, Sasuke's eyes widened slightly. That's right. I still am better. I just have to beat Naruto to prove it. Then there can be no doubt that I'm stronger and I can get back to training to kill Itachi. Seeing movement in the corner of his eye, he watched as Sakura lifted up a cut apple on a stick to him with a smile on her face saying, "Here you go, Sasuke-kun. A fresh apple should help you feel better." Annoyed, he took his hand and smacked the apple out of his face. Sakura screamed in fright, while Hinata gasped. Sakura started to tear up and Naruto grew angry, shouting, "What are you doing? You jerk. She was just trying to give you some food." Sasuke just smirked in response though, saying, "I don't care." Sakura looked even more hurt and Naruto was about to shout again when Sasuke cut him off. "Fight me, Naruto." Naruto was shocked into silence for a moment. He thought back to the Chunin exams and how excited he was to hear Sasuke wanted to fight him back then. How much he liked finally being acknowledged as an equal to Sasuke. Naruto began to grow excited again at the prospect of finally getting the fight he wanted. Plus, he would be able to hit Sasuke for treating Sakura so badly. He was about to accept when he looked over to Hinata and saw her looking worriedly at him. He felt like someone poured a bucket of cold water over him. Shaking his head, he frowned and said, "This isn't the time for that. You're still recovering and we shouldn't be fighting like this anyway." Sasuke growled in frustration at being blown off. He saw that Naruto was about to accept until he looked at that Hyuga girl. Eyes flashing red as he involuntarily activated his Sharingan. He barked out, "So you're fine with staying that same loser as you always have been? Not trying to get stronger through a fight with me? Cowering? Just like that useless girl is behind you?" Hinata flinched and looked down shamefully, memories of the painful things she had been told growing up flowing through her mind. Naruto, however, growled louder than she had ever heard him before. Naruto's eyes narrowed and a fierce expression grew on his face. Sasuke actually gulped a little when he saw a look in Naruto's eyes that resembled the one he saw in the forest. The temperature in the room dropped and Naruto seemed to be straining to hold himself back. Face tight, he growled out, "Don't talk about her like that." Hinata and Sakura were both frozen, unsure what to do about the thick and growing tension between the two boys. Sasuke, however, just swallowed his fear and gave a challenging look, saying, "If you don't want me to, then you better say it with your fists and not your words." Naruto growled more but seemed to agree with his statement. Flicking his head in the direction of the exit, Naruto started to make his way to the stairs. Sasuke followed behind him, smirk still plastered on his face. Meanwhile, the two girls just looked at each other, worried about what was happening. After a moment, they shook out of it and hurried after them. Once they reached the rooftop, they stopped and looked over to see Naruto and Sasuke standing several feet apart. The rooftop was filled with a bunch of hospital bedsheets drying on clotheslines, and some water tanks were off to the side of the building. The entire roof was fenced in and the sun had just reached its highest point in the sky. However, all Hinata and Sakura saw were the glares the two boys were sending to each other. Naruto was still angry at Sasuke but wanted to do this fight the right way. Pointing a finger at Sasuke, he growled out, "Put your headband on so we can get started." Sasuke just smirked in response and coolly replied, "There's no need. You won't even get to make a scratch on my forehead." Growing angrier, Naruto snarled and said, "That's not the point and you know it." Naruto took his thumb and jerked it up to his own headband, saying, "We wear these headbands to show our pride as Konoha shinobi. Having them on when we fight means that we view each other as equals and respect the other's skill." Sasuke laughed in response. "Us? Equals? You really expect me to believe that you think we're at the same skill level?" "Of course I do," Naruto yelled back. "I have never once thought I was inferior to you. I have always seen you as a rival to test my skills against." "Well, maybe it's time for you to see how you can never measure up to me," Sasuke countered. "Maybe then you'll understand the gulf between us." Naruto scowled but didn't say anything else and shifted into his stance. Sasuke took the opportunity to fall into his own fighting stance, Sharingan activating. For a moment, everything was silent. Only the breeze of the wind could be heard, although Sakura and Hinata would say they could hear the pounding of their hearts in their chest. Almost like it was planned, Naruto and Sasuke both ran to each other at the same time. They both cocked their right fist back and threw it at each other when they came close. However, they both caught their opponent's fist in their left hand. They both struggled against each other for a second, glaring all the while. Deciding it was worthless to continue this way, Sasuke drew his fist back and attempted to kick Naruto's leg out. Naruto saw the kick approaching and dropped his arms to grab Sasuke's leg. With a grunt of effort, Naruto spun Sasuke and tried to throw him away. Sasuke, however, put one hand on the rooftop and used the leverage to spin around and kick Naruto into the air with his other foot. Recovering after being blown away, Naruto righted himself in midair and used the moment to create a shadow clone. After he landed, Naruto and his clone both charged Sasuke, one attempting to strike high and the other low. Sharingan tracking his movements, Sasuke kicked one in the side and pushed the other into a bedsheet hanging nearby. The one he kicked disappeared in a cloud of smoke after a moment, and Sasuke ran towards where the sheet was holding the real Naruto. Sasuke grabbed the sheet and yanked it off, but instead of seeing Naruto like he expected, he was greeted by thin air. Looking around rapidly, Sasuke tried to locate where Naruto had disappeared to. Scanning the rooftop, he stayed alert and shot his eyes over when he saw one of the sheets flutter upwards due to movement. When he still couldn't find his opponent, Sasuke's gaze was drawn to the water tower. His eyes raked over the tower until he reached the top and he saw a shadowy figure standing tall in front of the sun. Sasuke had to avert his eyes due to the harsh light of the sun, and Naruto took that opportunity to leap down and attack. Naruto threw a quick punch that Sasuke sloppily blocked due to his vision being harmed by the sun. Sasuke stumbled back and Naruto used the opportunity to rapidly create another shadow clone. Naruto advanced trying to land another hit while the clone quickly ran behind Sasuke. Sasuke used his arm to deflect Naruto's fist coming towards him, However, he was unable to block the clone behind him. Using the distraction, Naruto's clone swept Sasuke off his feet, leaving him on the ground for Naruto to follow up. Naruto quickly turned and attempted to stomp Sasuke into the ground, but Sasuke grabbed the clone behind him and pulled him on top so the clone would get hit instead. Naruto stumbled back from the surprise of hitting his own clone, and Sasuke jumped up and kicked Naruto in the gut. Wincing, Naruto jumped back to create some more distance between the two of them. Throwing his hands together in his favorite hand sign, Naruto grinned and shouted, "Multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu." With that, Naruto's numbers went from 1 to 100 as he and his clones trapped Sasuke in a circle between them. Sasuke became defensive and looked around to the Narutos surrounding him. Intent on overwhelming him, the Narutos began to charge. Sasuke threw kicks and punches at every clone that came close to him. With the Sharingan, he was able to anticipate where the next clone would come and move to intercept it. However, it started to become too much. With every clone that he popped, 2 more took its place. Even if his Sharingan could see the clone attacking, he just couldn't move his body fast enough to counter each one. Eventually, they started to land blows on him. At first, it was just a graze from a fist or foot, but it turned into Sasuke taking full-body hits that began to wear on his stamina. Realizing he was on the back pedal, Sasuke quickly came up with an idea to turn things around. When the next clone overshot his punch, Sasuke took the opportunity to jump on his back and launch himself into the air. Sasuke quickly performed hand signs while flipping around in midair to face the Narutos on the rooftop. Inhaling a deep breath, Sasuke thought, "Fire style. Great fireball jutsu." Sasuke exhaled and a huge stream of fire followed the direction of his breath. When Naruto saw Sasuke performing the hand signs, his eyes widened. "Crap! I can't believe Sasuke is gonna use that fireball jutsu on me," he thought, panicking. "Think, Naruto, think. How can I counter something like that? I don't know any water jutsu and I'm not sure if I can blow it away." When he thought that, a light bulb went off in his head. That just might work. "Well, I don't have any time to test it, so I just gotta go with it," Naruto thought with a grin. Summoning a shadow clone, he held his hand out and quickly made a Rasengan. However, this time, the clone kept applying rotation to the ball, which allowed it to let out winds from the intense chakra coming from the jutsu. Sasuke smirked when he finished his jutsu and watched all of Naruto's clones disappear. However, his grin fell when he saw Naruto's form emerge in the center of the flames when whipping winds blew the fire away. He concentrated on Naruto and saw what looked like a ball of chakra in his hands creating the fierce winds. "What in the world is that jutsu? I've never seen anything like it," Sasuke thought in surprise. Realizing he was reaching the height of his previous jump, he shook off his astonishment. "No matter. Can't be that strong. It won't hold up to my Chidori. I have to take this chance and win, no matter the cost." As Sasuke began to fall, he quickly performed more hand signs. Electricity coating his arm, he thrust it in the direction of Naruto and yelled out, "Chidori!" Seeing Sasuke quickly falling to him, Naruto cursed his luck. "He's really taking this seriously. I don't think I can dodge him when he's coming that fast. I just have to use my Rasengan and hope it cancels out." Naruto jumped towards Sasuke and thrust forward his palm holding the ball of chakra, yelling, "Rasengan!" While they had been fighting, Sakura and Hinata had been watching, growing progressively more worried with each blow. They both stood at the entrance, trying to think of a way to calm them down. However, when Sasuke jumped in the air and did his hand signs, Sakura's breath hitched. When Sasuke let loose the stream of flames, Sakura gasped and Hinata cried out, "Naruto-kun!" Hinata quickly activated her Byakugan and breathed a sigh of relief when she saw Naruto's chakra signature still strong in the flames. She panicked though when Sasuke activated his Chidori and began descending to hit Naruto. He's gonna use the Chidori on Naruto, the jutsu that was made for performing an assassination. "I can't let that happen." Doubt gone, Hinata began sprinting towards them, hoping to be able to do anything to stop a fatal collision. Meanwhile, Sakura was having similar thoughts. Are they trying to kill each other? Both of them using such strong jutsus. "I have to stop them." Sakura started running towards them as well, shouting, "Stop it." However, because she ran a split second after Hinata and was slightly slower than her, Sakura lagged behind. In the end though, it didn't matter. as Kakashi appeared right before the moment of Naruto and Sasuke's collision. Grabbing both of their arms, he used his momentum to throw both of them away. Naruto and Sasuke both went arm first into the water tanks nearby, jutsus going off as soon as they made contact. Sakura and Hinata both let out sighs of relief that Kakashi had arrived and prevented a disaster. Meanwhile, once Kakashi's feet hit the rooftop, he turned towards Naruto and Sasuke, giving them a blank look. With a lazy drawl, he asked, "What were you two doing?" "Looked a little too intense to me for a sparring match between teammates." Naruto groaned and lifted his hand from where it had impacted the water tank. The surface of the tank had indented in a circular area a few feet in diameter where the Rasengan had impacted. When Naruto removed his hand, a small stream of water began trickling out of the hole made in the center of the impact area. Sasuke looked where he impacted his own water tank and saw how the metal twisted around his arm. He pulled out his arm with a little difficulty and smirked when he saw the difference in damage between his jutsu and Naruto's. "Were you really going to kill him, Sasuke?" Jumping at the sound of the voice, Sasuke looked up and saw Kakashi squatting on top of the water tank. When did he get there? Sasuke thought in surprise. However, Sasuke just grunted in response, not giving away anything. Kakashi sighed before giving him a sharp look. "The Chidori is an A-rank assassination jutsu, Sasuke. It is meant to be used to protect your friends. I didn't teach it to you, so you could use it against a comrade from our own village." Sasuke just glared slightly and Kakashi turned to Naruto. His tone slightly softer than what he used for Sasuke. He told him, "The same goes for you, Naruto. The Rasengan is an S-rank jutsu that could have done serious damage. I know you only used it because Sasuke backed you into a corner, but you need to be careful with that jutsu. It has an important legacy, and it's your duty to uphold it." Naruto winced and looked down in shame at that. Kakashi decided to give him a break since it seemed like Naruto understood where he was coming from. Sasuke was shocked to learn that the jutsu Naruto used was an S-rank one. That loser learned an S-rank jutsu? He must not have been able to use it very well since my Chidori did more damage than his own, he thought, his face morphing into a smirk at the end. Watching as Sasuke's face changed, Kakashi could tell where his thoughts were going. Trying to nip it in the bud, he spoke up, "You need to watch that arrogance, Sasuke. It could get you into some serious trouble." Sasuke snapped out of it at those words and threw Kakashi an annoyed look. Unperturbed, Kakashi continued, "There will always be someone stronger than you, and if you think there isn't, then you will find out the hard way." Snarling at the thought of a certain person stronger than him, Sasuke pointedly looked away. Kakashi sighed again before addressing them both. "Alright, since you both caused some damage up here, I'm gonna have to be taking some funds out of your future mission payments to pay for repairs. You especially, Sasuke, since you burnt all of the hospital's bedsheets." Naruto nodded slowly, showing he understood. But Sasuke just frowned more. Muttering out whatever, he stuffed his hands in his pockets and jumped off the rooftop to the ground below. As Sasuke started to walk off, he stopped when he felt some water dripping down on him. Looking up, his face morphed into shock when he saw it was coming from the water tank Naruto had hit. The Rasengan had blown up inside the tank and created a huge hole in the back, causing all the water to escape. After he got over his shock, he shook with anger and his mouth turned into a snarl. Storming off, Sasuke came up with plans of how he could get stronger than he was now, while wondering just when Naruto had gotten so much power. Kakashi sighed as he watched Sasuke get angry and walk off. "I'm going to have to do something about all that rage within him. I just don't know how though," Kakashi thought with his blank look. Deciding to worry about it later, he gave the 3 remaining genin an eye smile and said, "Well, I'll see you all later. Remember, we've got training in the morning." Not giving them a chance to respond, Kakashi disappeared in a poof of smoke. Everyone else stood around awkwardly until Sakura blurted out, I should probably go check on Sasuke-kun." She quickly hurried away, but not before turning around and shouting, "See you tomorrow, Naruto. Hinata, it was fun hanging out with you today. We should do it again sometime." Naruto didn't seem to hear her, but Hinata did and gave her a shy wave and nod in response. With that, Sakura left, intent on catching up to Sasuke. Hinata and Naruto were left alone after that. Naruto was still silent and Hinata grew more worried. However, She wasn't sure what to say and kept poking her fingers together, giving him quick glances. Realizing she would have to make the first move, she took a deep breath and then approached him. Reaching out with a trembling hand, she softly gripped his arm. Naruto jumped up in surprise but calmed down once he saw who it was. Hinata gave him a worried look and asked, "And Naruto-kun, are you okay?" Naruto realized he had worried her and tried to solve the problem. Throwing on a fake smile, he nodded, "Yeah, I'm perfectly okay, Hinata-chan." Hinata didn't buy it though. She frowned at him and moved her hand to grab his own. Looking him in the eye, she said, Please don't lie to me, Naruto-kun. I know you're hurting and I want to help you. We promised we would be there for each other, didn't we? That means we have to speak honestly with each other." Naruto broke her gaze and looked down shamefully. Dropping his smile, he replied back sadly, "I am sorry, Hinata-chan. I didn't meant to lie to you. I just didn't want you to worry. The truth is I'm upset because I think Sasuke really might have killed me. Even if he didn't really mean to, I don't know if he would have stopped. And I'm just as bad. I used my father's prize jutsu and almost seriously harmed my friend with it." Naruto started to cry before he felt a soft hand stroking his cheek. Facing forward, he saw Hinata giving him a sad smile. She then took her hand off his cheek and put it over his heart, saying, "You're a good person, Naruto-kun. You have a warm heart that cares about your friends more than you care about yourself. I can't speak for Sasuke, but I know you would try to avoid anything that hurts your friends." Hearing Hinata's kind words filled Naruto with joy. Drying his tears, he grabbed Hinata's hand and gave it a squeeze. Mouth turning up into a genuine smile, he laughed and said, "Thank you, Hinata-chan. You always know how to cheer me up." Hinata gave a radiant smile in response and Naruto felt his cheeks heating up. Hurriedly, he started pulling her along back towards the stairs. "You've got your clan practice today, right?" Naruto asked, turning back to look at her. At Hinata's nod, he continued, "Well, let me take you back to your house then." Turning red but not denying him, Hinata tightened her hand and let him lead her on. After a trip in silence, they started getting close to the Hyuga compound. When they were not too far away, Naruto let go of Hinata's hand. He would have liked to escort Hinata inside, but he knew that he didn't need to start any harmful rumors for her. Instead, he looked to her and gave her a small smile, saying, "I had fun today, Hinata-chan. I'm glad you were able to be with me even if I kinda messed things up." Shaking her head, Hinata disagreed. "And no, I enjoyed it too, Naruto-kun. I would like to continue to see you and train with you whenever my schedule allows." Naruto's smile turned into a giant grin at her words. Unable to resist the urge, he closed the distance between them. Scooping her into a tight hug, he yelled out, "Really? I'm so glad, Hinata-chan. You're always welcome whenever you want to join me." Hinata turned crimson and didn't want to risk saying the wrong thing. Instead, she nodded happily and tightened her own arms around him. Naruto loosened his grip slightly and spoke again in a soft voice, "And don't let what Sasuke said earlier get you down. You're not useless. You're a strong shinobi and one I would love to fight beside any day. Plus, you're super nice and super pretty." Naruto separated from her quickly and started to run off, not noticing her atomic red face. Giving her a quick wave, he yelled out, "See you later, Hinata-chan," and then ran off towards his home. He didn't seem to hear the thud that Hinata made a moment later when she hit the ground. Over in Suna, Temari was laying awake in her bed that night. Most of her things were already packed as they were going to be leaving tomorrow, early in the morning to avoid as much of the desert sun as they could. The only things she had left out were the clothes and items she would need to get ready tomorrow and the small tanuki plushie she currently had in her grasp. Her brothers had helped her pack earlier and Kankuro, of course, gave her a hard time over still having plushies at her age. He shut up pretty quickly though when a fist hit him over the head and she reminded him about his makeup and doll collection. After that, they got back to work and quickly finished packing everything else into seals. They may have saw my plushies, but at least I had the foresight to seal up my favorite book collection before they came to help, she thought with a light blush. I'm sure Kankuro has them too, but he doesn't need to know that I'm a huge fan of it. Not to mention, I have no idea how I would ever be able to explain any of that to Gaara. I guess if there is one upside about all this, I'll be moving to Konoha where the author is from. Maybe if I'm lucky, I can get my books signed. Temari grew excited at the prospect of having signed books, but quickly became somber when she remembered that she was leaving tomorrow. She had already finished saying most of her goodbyes and finishing any business she had. Not that she had too many people to talk to anyway. She loved her village and had immense pride being a kunoichi for it, but she never really connected with too many people there. The only people she had a personal connection with was her family and her sensei. Even though she was never close with her father, due to the way he treated Gaara, she still felt a slight regret that she never got to say goodbye to him. Besides that, both her brothers and her sensei were traveling with her, so she didn't need to say farewell to them just yet. Everyone else was intimidated by either her status as the Kazekage's daughter or the fact that Gaara was her brother. In the end, no one wanted to become her friend and truly get to know her. With that thought in mind, she held some slight hope for moving to Konoha. She was getting a new start, and with it the chance to make some friends. Although it would be hard due to both the fact she was a prisoner of sorts and some people could hold hostility to her because of Suna's invasion. She knew she would have to get close to both Naruto and the Hyuga heiress, but wasn't sure how they would feel about her. She had tried to do a little research over the past few days when she had time, but nothing proved fruitful. Naruto was the proclaimed dead last with no skill to his name whatsoever, Temari thought. The only notable thing marked down was his insane chakra reserves and the fact that he knew the shadow clone jutsu. Everything else was stated as either below average or abysmal. And yet, he was able to defeat Gaara and possesses the Toad summoning contract. There wasn't even a mention of the Uzumaki clan in his records. I don't know if he or Konoha is hiding his true potential, but I suppose I'll find out. She then shifted her thoughts to what the records said about Hinata, the supposed failure of the Hyuga clan. Even though she is the heiress, it says she underperforms in almost all areas. She's not terrible at anything but doesn't excel at much either. It's even reported that her sister is better in almost all ways and is 4 years her junior, which makes it even more strange that she hasn't been sealed yet and the younger one declared heiress. Other than a severe lack of self-confidence, nothing else is noted about her. Temari sighed, so I'm getting stuck with 2 of Konoha's failures. They're so similar and yet so different at the same time. One's a timid mouse who can't speak up and the other is a walking chatterbox. One is from the most impressive clan in the village, and the other is an orphan who has no known family. Temari shifted around in her bed, trying to get comfortable. After a moment, she thought, well, I don't know how this is going to go, but I guess I just have to give my best effort to make it work. If nothing else, then for the good of my village. I just hope that I don't become miserable in the process. With those last thoughts, Temari fell into a restless sleep. She had several dreams of a possible future she could have in her new role. Some not too bad and others horrible. None, however, could stop the slow trickle of tears that would sometimes roll down her cheeks. Chapter 7. Feeding the Heart. To the north of the land of fire lies the land of rice paddies. It was a mostly peaceful region, where its people spent their days living off the land. To most, it was a nice place but held nothing that really made it stand out. However, the region held a dark secret that was known to only a few. Below the surface lies a series of interconnected tunnels. They weave in haphazard directions, spreading out for miles in a veritable maze. To anyone who didn't know the way, it would be an almost certainty to get lost. But to a few individuals, they called this place home. They called it Otokagure. In this dark and dreary place, people of all different kinds could be found. Some joined willingly, either down on their luck or finding a sense of purpose in what could be done. Others were forced to reside here against their will. A few had even been created here, knowing nothing of the outside world. They all had one thing in common though. They all served some sort of purpose to their leader Orochimaru, even if they didn't like it or know it yet. Speaking of their leader, his quarters were the most well-hidden and known only to his most trusted subordinates. His room held a vast multitude of books on varying subjects and shelves full of what seemed to different chemicals. There was even some vials that contained parts of both people and animals. None of it was what held Orochimaru's attention though. Instead, he was lying on his bed, hissing and writhing in discomfort. Every time his dead arms made contact with the sheets or moved the wrong way, it sent shocks of pain into his nervous system. Curse that foolish third Hokage for doing this to me, Orochimaru hissed in his mind. And curse Tsunade for not healing my arms when I needed her to. When did she suddenly get the spine to once again step onto the field of battle? She even took up that blasted Hokage hat. Before he could devolve into more ranting in his head, a knock on the door shook him out of his thoughts. With great effort, he managed to sit up straight on the bed, keeping his grunts of exertion quiet. When he was ready, he put on a facade of strength and called out, "Enter." The door opened and Kabuto slowly slipped through the crack in the door. Spotting Orochimaru sitting on the bed looking at him, Kabuto entered into the room fully before closing the door behind him. Kabuto then kneeled before Orochimaru and said, "I have returned from my mission, Lord Orochimaru." Orochimaru gave Kabuto a wicked grin and asked, "Well, go ahead with your report. How fares Konoha? I assume you were not detected." Kabuto got up from kneeling and shook his head. "Of course not, Lord Orochimaru. They never knew I was even there." He used his finger to push his glasses up before saying, "As for Konoha, Lady Tsunade has now been officially sworn into office. It's still too early to tell for sure, but the reception to her has been mostly positive so far." Orochimaru nodded but didn't show any other visible emotion. Kabuto, knowing not to test his lord's patience, quickly continued on to what Orochimaru really wanted to know with Sasuke. "Things are progressing even better than you expected. The curse mark is reacting to his negative emotions and causing his alliances to Konoha to stray further away. It seems that there is a great source of friction between him and his team as well." Licking his lips, Orochimaru chuckled, "Good. The less bonds Sasuke has, the more willing he will be to come to me. How quickly do you think you would be able to draw him here?" Grimacing on the inside but keeping his face blanket to not show weakness, Kabuto replied, "That might be more difficult than we originally thought. Sasuke could be willing to come, but the village is watching him like a hawk. His sensei, Kakashi Hatake, is keeping him under tight supervision as well. I've left the Sound Four to keep an eye on him, but told them not to make contact since I'm not sure they would be able to avoid Kakashi's watchful eye." "I see. How disappointing," Orochimaru said with a frown. "And when do you expect to be able to extract Sasuke?" Kabuto started to sweat but answered, "It could take several weeks, Lord Orochimaru. If we see an ample opportunity we will take it, but I'm not sure if we will have one available." Orochimaru's frown deepened and Kabuto delicately stated, In light of this, I think we should go ahead and start preparing your next body. You won't last much longer in this state, and if we wait till the last minute, we will be unable to do the transfer." Orochimaru sighed. "I had so hoped to be able to have the Sharingan in my next body." "Very well, begin the preparations. But I want the Sound for notified to be on the ready to lure Sasuke here at any opening." Orochimaru's nonchalant tone masked the disdain he felt for not getting the body he desired. However, Kabuto heard the unspoken threat loud and clear and he nodded quickly. "At once, Lord Orochimaru." "Is that all, Kabuto? Or do you have more disappointments to tell me?" Orochimaru asked with vitriol. This time, Kabuto was unable to hid his wince, but composed himself enough to answer, "Actually, Lord Orochimaru, I have one more piece of news to relay. One you might find very interesting." With his interest piqued, Orochimaru chuckled. "Well, go ahead then." Kabuto took off his glasses to wipe them off and replied, "Konoha has been in peace talks with Suna since the invasion has ended. It hasn't been announced, but I was able to find out that one of the terms is that Suna is sending the Kazekage's daughter, Temari, to Konoha. She is to become part of their ranks and supposedly bring their nations closer." Orochimaru raised an eyebrow and spoke, "While it is a bit unorthodox and a dated system, I do not see how that has any relevancy." "Oh, but it has some interesting strings attached to it, Lord Orochimaru," Kabuto said with a chuckle. "It's being kept under tight wraps, but she is being sent to marry one of Konoha's shinobi. And the best part, the one chosen as the groom is Naruto Uzumaki." That got Orochimaru's attention. Slowly, Orochimaru asked, "Really? They're marrying her to the Kyuubi Jinchuriki?" Kabuto nodded, "Yes, and that's not all. Apparently, they're also arranging the Hyuga heiress, Hinata Hyuga, to marry him as well. They seem to have worries about him being tied too much to Suna and want to have ways to ensure he stays loyal to Konoha." With that, Orochimaru fell into deep thought. They're marrying off the Kyuubi Jinchuriki instead of someone like Sasuke or another clan child. They might be doing this because of who his parents are, but I don't see the full angle of it. Remembering something Kabuto said earlier, Orochimaru started chuckling. After a moment, it turned into full-blown laughter. Kabuto was unnerved by his master's laughing fit, but didn't dare to interrupt him. After he calmed down, Orochimaru opened his mouth and licked his lips with his abnormally long tongue. This is very interesting news indeed, Kabuto. I believe I have a way we can use this in our favor. It will just require a bit of patience and I will be able to have Sasuke in my grasp. With those words echoing, Orochimaru began to explain his plan to Kabuto, intent on luring Sasuke to his side. Back in Konoha, Naruto was sitting up against a tree. He had been training all morning and was taking a break at the current moment. It had been 3 days since his fight with Sasuke at the hospital and things were still tense. Sasuke had arrived the next day at the training ground, but Naruto could tell that nothing had changed. He just ignored him and Sakura and went straight into practicing with his shuriken. Sakura had, of course, went back to fawning over Sasuke like always. Although, to Naruto, it seemed like she was less enthusiastic about it and more subdued. Shifting his weight against the tree, Naruto leaned over to grab his bag that he had brought with him. Opening it up, he grabbed the box that was in it and took it out. It was his lunch for the day, a bento that had been packaged nicely just for him. He smiled as he recalled how his meals had been changing the past few days. Naruto was in his apartment, getting ready for the day. He had already had his breakfast and was about to leave when he heard a soft knock on his door. Confused as to who would be visiting him, Naruto walked towards the door and opened it. He was surprised when he saw Hinata standing there awkwardly with a blush on her face and a box clutched in her grasp. Naruto quickly got over his surprise and a grin replaced his shocked expression. "Hinata-chan, good morning," he exclaimed and went to wrap her up in a hug, taking care not to crush whatever she was holding. She squeaked in surprise and fumbled out, "Gee, good morning, Naruto-kun." After a moment, he released her and stepped back to look at her before asking, "What are you doing here? Did you come to walk with me to training?" Much to his disappointment, Hinata shook her head. "And no, Naruto-kun, I have training with my own team today. I just wanted to give you something first," she said nervously. Naruto tilted his head and closed his eyes in a way that made him look like a fox to Hinata. She had to fight the urge not to faint from the cuteness he was projecting to her. Taking a deep breath, she thrust the box towards Naruto and bowed her head so she wouldn't have to look him in the eye. "Please, accept this gift from me," she shouted with urgency. Jumping from her sudden shouting, Naruto quickly took the box she offered. Once it was in his hands, Hinata quickly said, "I hope I like please excuse my habito go to training," and bolted for the door, not giving Naruto a chance to respond. Naruto stood there frozen, unable to process what just happened. After his brain had caught up with everything, he sighed, "Hinata-chan sure is nice, but I don't know if I'll ever understand her." Turning his attention to the box in his grasp, he donned a curious expression before opening it up to see what was inside. As soon as it was opened, an intoxicating aroma hit his nose. He started salivating and looked to see that she had made him a freshly cooked meal. She had obviously put a lot of care into what she had cooked. Everything looked fresh and there seemed to be an assortment of different food for all the nutrients he needed. It also looked like she had tried to make everything fit into the box in the neatest possible manner she could. Naruto wanted to taste it but was hesitant about messing up her hard work. In the end, he decided that she wanted him to eat it, so it would have to be messed up eventually. He grabbed the chopsticks that she included in the box and used them to grab the first bite of food. As soon as the taste hit his tongue, his eyes widened. He had to restrain himself from shoveling the rest in his mouth. Instead, he slowly put the chopsticks back in the box and closed the lid. He wanted to eat the rest but forced himself to save it for his lunch. "I need to wait to eat it after training. After all, I'm sure I'll work twice as hard if I know I've got such good food waiting for me," after Naruto exclaimed, trying to convince himself. As he continued to stare at the box, he started tearing up and even let out a little sniffle. Not just because of how good the food tasted, but also because it was the first home-cooked meal he had ever had. Wiping his eyes, He tucked the box carefully into his bag and started to head out. His expression changed to one of pure happiness, and he went on his way, thoughts of Hinata and her deep kindness floating around in his mind. Since then, Hinata had continued to make him more lunches. He had wanted to ask her why she was doing it, but he didn't want to accidentally offend her and have her stop. He was enjoying them far too much, and it would feel like a gut punch to lose it all now. Although, as a side effect of her cooking for him, he hadn't been able to visit Ichiraku's as much as he normally would. It felt kind of wrong not to go there whenever he could, but he didn't want to just disregard Hinata's cooking. I'll just have to find some time to visit, even if I don't eat much, Naruto thought, nodding to himself. I can probably still go once or twice a week. Maybe Hinata will even go with me if I tell her ahead of time. That way we can still eat together and I can treat her to a meal for cooking for me. Naruto grew excited with his plan and would try to find a time that would work with Hinata. Besides, he liked to visit Ichiraku's even if it wasn't for a meal. Old Man Tucci and Ayam were important people to him, and seeing them always lifted his mood. They might be sad not seeing him every day, but they would probably understand his reasoning. Plus, Ayam was always getting on to him to eat better anyway. He was aware that so much ramen wasn't good for him, but he never had too many options. A lot of places wouldn't sell to him or would try to give him bad deals on everything. That's why he was so surprised that Ichiraku's would give him food when he first came across it. They didn't even charge him any for that first time. Ever since then, ramen had been his favorite food, and the ramen from Ichiraku's was at the top of the list. Not just because of how it tasted, but also because of what it meant to him. A kind gesture that likely saved him from despair. One that continues today, with Tucci and Ayam always having a smile on their face and a warm bowl of ramen for him. It's for a similar reason that Hinata's cooking is so special to him as well. Ichiraku's may have given him his first happy memory of meal, but it was different to Hinata's. Even though the Ichiraku's fed him, it was with ramen they were already cooking. It was something that was prepared for all customers and usually not someone specific in mind. With Hinata, she made a meal that was just for him. She wasn't running a restaurant and didn't try to make it for other people. She did it thinking solely of him and put her time and effort into it, thinking of nothing in return. It still shook him to think that she would do something like that just to try and make him happy. So now he found himself having another source of food that was quickly growing to be his favorite as well. He wasn't sure if he could pick one that he liked more than the other though. They both meant a lot to him. Although he had to admit that Hinata was pretty talented at cooking for how young she was. She probably would only get better with more experience as well. Now, if only I could get her to cook me some ramen with her special touch, I might really die of happiness that day, he thought with excitement, some drool escaping his mouth. Wiping his mouth, his thoughts turned to something that happened yesterday. Still though, I wonder why she's so funny about accepting praise for her cooking? I was just trying to tell her how good it was. Yesterday, Naruto had arrived at the training ground late, body still sore from what he had been put through the day before. However, when he got close, he heard the sound of someone hitting a training post. Growing curious, he stepped into the field fully and was surprised to see Hinata there practicing her gentle fist. Fatigue forgotten, a wide smile took over Naruto's face and he rushed over to her. On the way over, he took notice of Sasuke and Sakura, who were practicing at a different part of the area. Sasuke just gave him a passing glance before snorting and returning to his own training. Sakura gave him a smile and a small wave, but chose to stay where she was watching Sasuke. Kakashi, of course, wasn't there yet, but Naruto wasn't as late as Kakashi usually is. Naruto slowed his pace as he neared Hinata, who had heard his approach and perked up, slight blush taking over her face. "Hey Hinata-chan." "Good morning," he exclaimed in greeting when he reached her. Hinata ducked her head slightly and stuttered out her own greeting, hello Naruto-kun. "Gee, good morning to you as well." Hearing her soft voice lifted Naruto's spurt even higher and his grin grew, threatening to split his face. "I'm glad you were able to make it today. Sorry I was late, but I was just so tired after yesterday," Naruto said, growing worried at his statement. Hinata lifted a hand to her mouth and gasped out, "Oh no! Are you okay?" Realizing he had worried her, Naruto quickly shook his hands in front of him and stated, "Why yeah, I'm fine. I'll probably just be a little slow today. Nothing I can't handle." Hinata squinted her eyes and glanced over him, not believing what he said. Trying to avert her attention, Naruto quickly asked, "So are you training your gentle fist over here? Weren't you trying to develop a new style for yourself? So why not work on that?" She knew he was trying to distract her but decided to indulge him anyway. It's true I want to make a new style. But it's difficult to test it by myself. Since it relies on dodging having someone to spar with will help me out more than training alone. Besides, practicing the gentle fist is still helpful. I'll need to incorporate it into my style, and it's never harmful to know something else, she explained to him. Understanding what she was saying, Naruto replied, "I see. But if that's true, why don't you get someone to help you? Did you try to ask Sakura or Sasuke?" A dark look then crossed Naruto's face and he asked in a low tone, "Sasuke wasn't mean to you, right? He didn't say or do anything hurtful to you." Sensing his rising tension, Hinata quickly shook her head in denial. And no, he didn't do anything. In truth, when Hinata had arrived that morning and greeted Sakura and Sasuke, he just grunted and returned to his own training. Sakura had, of course, excitedly greeted her and thanked her for yesterday once again. Hinata, embarrassed, just said it was no big deal and went to training by the post alone. Pleased that she was all right, Naruto perked up and nodded his head. He then got an idea and let a smile onto his face. "Well, if they won't spar with you, then I will. I'm not the best, but I can probably help you out." Hinata smiled in return and accepted his help. "Okay. Thank you, Naruto-kun. I'll do my best to help you too." Happy that she accepted, Naruto grinned and exclaimed, "Okay. Let's both get warmed up and then we'll spar." After he said those words, the two of them both began stretching and practicing their stances. When they both felt like they were ready, they faced each other and began to spar. They continued for several hours, both seeking to improve and help the other improve. Throughout the matches, they both noticed things about the other. Hinata noticed that, for some reason, Naruto seemed to be moving slower. However, it was only a marginal amount, and the few times he managed to hit her, it felt stronger than last time. He was also rapidly fixing the holes in his own fighting stances. Whenever he lost, Hinata would give him tips on what went wrong and how he could adjust it. He was a fast learner too, as whenever she told him what was wrong, he corrected it the very next time. On Naruto's end, he saw how much potential Hinata's style had. She lost very few of the matches they had, and the few times she did were because she was hesitant to go on the offense. He remedied that though by reminding her to give it her all and take any opening she could find. She took it to heart, and Naruto was amazed by the growing confidence he saw in her. The focused look on her face caused a tight feeling in his stomach that was hard to ignore even if he grew frustrated the more times she avoided his attacks. Near lunchtime, the two of them both stood facing each other, having just finished another spar. They were both panting and were covered in dirt on different parts of their bodies and clothing. Even so, the two of them were both wearing grins and seemed to be having the time of their lives. The slight moment of peace was broken by the sound of clapping. Looking around, they noticed Kakashi leaning against a tree nearby. When they turned their attention to him, he stopped clapping, and I smiled, saying, "Good job, you two. I can really see your improvements." Hinata blushed and tried to bury her head in her jacket at the praise. Naruto, however, grew a tick mark and shouted, "You're late, Kakashi-sensei." Kakashi just shrugged it off and replied, "I was on my way here when I remembered I left the stove on and had to go turn it off." Naruto and Hinata both sweat-dropped at his comment. Naruto was used to it, but Hinata thought, is he always like this? I only have Kurenai-sensei to compare him to, but he seems far more relaxed than her. Trying to change the subject, Kakashi addressed Naruto. "So how are you handling those weights I gave you? From what I could see, you were slower to start with, but you seem to get your foothold pretty fast." Naruto nodded. "Yeah, I'm getting used to it, but I still feel sluggish. I have a hard enough time hitting Hinata-chan, but today I was really having trouble." Feeling Naruto's frustration, Kakashi chuckled. "That's probably how it's going to be for a while. You're going to have to keep them on until you're used to them, and when you don't notice the weight anymore, we'll increase it again." Naruto groaned at that but didn't say anything else. Hinata, however, tilted her head and questioned, "Weights?" Realizing that he hadn't told her yet, Naruto perked up and nodded. "Yeah. Kakashi-sensei got me weights yesterday, like bushy brows." Naruto then pulled his arm sleeves back where she could see the weights he had there. I have these and then some on my legs too. Kakashi-sensei got the idea to use them to help increase my strength and speed. He then pouted his lips before continuing. Although he really ran me ragged yesterday, even though they were only 5 pounds each, it really felt like a sack of bricks. And then he had me running laps around the whole field. I ended up passing out as soon as I got home, and that was why I was so late today. Naruto gave Kakashi a fierce glare at that, but he had his nose in his book, ignoring Naruto. Naruto sighed and turned his attention to Hinata, but was confused when she had a faraway look in her eyes. Meanwhile, in Hinata's mind, she had thoughts of her own. Naruto-kun's using weights? That means he'll be building up muscles, right? Possibilities of what Naruto could end up like flew through her head. Each one had him looking buffer, either at his age now or a few years in the future. Sometimes she would be hugging his body or his arm. Others, he would be picking her up in his arms and holding her close to him. They all served the same purpose though. Every mental image got her more excited at what she could have. On the outside, Naruto was waving his hand in front of Hinata, trying to get her attention. He was stumped on why she wasn't responding. After a moment, she started to giggle. Naruto grew concerned at her reaction, and that concern doubled when he saw a trail of blood start to leak out of her nose. Alarmed, Naruto grabbed Hinata by the arms and started to shake her, trying to snap her out of it. Kakashi watched it all happen, amused by the antics of the two. He giggled pervertedly, thinking, "You're a lucky man, Naruto. You've got a real winner there that'll show you some fun in the future. And to think it's just one of the girls you've got. Is this what it feels to have a sense of pride for a student?" Stuck in his thoughts, he watched as Naruto seemed to have an idea and whispered something in Hinata's ear. Whatever it was, had the intended effect as Hinata jumped out of her trance and started shaking Naruto instead. When she seemed to notice what she was doing, she eeped and let go of him, blushing a scarlet red. While he was highly entertained by them, he figured he should bring their attention back. Clearing his throat, he waited until they both turned to him, blush present on both their cheeks. Resisting the urge to say how cute they looked, he instead said, "Well, like I said earlier, you seem to be getting a handle on things, Naruto. In fact, your taijutsu looked much better as the day went on, and I believe I have you to thank for that, Lady Hinata." Hinata shrunk when the spotlight turned to her and she sputtered, it was nothing." Kakashi merely chuckled in response. "Oh no, it was much more than that. In fact, I would like you to continue helping Naruto in taijutsu whenever you have the time. I would help him, but I think having someone closer to him in age and skill level would be a greater boon to him. Besides, it seemed like he was assisting you as well." Embarrassed at being put on the spot, but not wanting to let either of them down, Hinata nodded. "Why yes, I would be happy to help Naruto-kun whenever I can," she exclaimed excitedly. Naruto gave a soft smile at her eagerness to help. Kakashi gave a thumbs up and an eye smile, saying, "Well, that's great then. I'll leave the two of you to it, although you should probably take a break with how much you've been working. Hurting yourselves won't let you make progress after all." Giving them a wave, he started to walk off towards where Sakura and Sasuke were at, planning on giving them some instruction as well. With his suggestion, both of their stomachs let out a growl in unison. They both flushed red and looked away from each other. After a moment, Naruto let out a chuckle and scratched the back of his head. "Well, since it seems like we're both hungry, how about we take a break for lunch?" Naruto asked nervously. Hinata nodded shyly and said, I would like that, Naruto-kun. How about we go sit over in that shaded area? I brought some lunch with me that we can share." Growing excited at the prospect of having more of her food, Naruto agreed excitedly, "Yeah, let's do that." The two of them made their way over to where Hinata suggested, stopping by her pack to let her grab the food she talked about. Once they arrived, Hinata handed Naruto his box and he sat down ready to dig in. Hinata wanted to sit close to him but was nervous about it as well. In the end, she decided to sit a couple of feet away so she would be close but not so much that she would panic about it. Naruto was about to open the lid to see what she had made when he remembered something. Putting his lunch to the side for a moment, he turned to Hinata to address her. "Hey Hinata-chan?" At the sound of his voice, Hinata turned to look at him questioningly. Seeing that he had her attention, he continued, I just wanted to thank you for the food yesterday. It was really good and really nice of you to do that for me. I've never had anyone make a home-cooked meal for me, so it meant a lot to me. Hinata blushed and ducked her head at the sudden confession. Trying to control her breathing, she stuttered out, it was nothing, Naruto-kun. I just wanted to help you as a friend and let you be better. I am not particularly good at sea cooking, but I hope it was good anyway. Looking at her like she had grown another head, Naruto confusedly stated, not good at cooking? If that was you not being good at cooking, then words won't be able to describe how it'll be if you get great at cooking. Hinata was stunned by his fierce declaration of her skills, and he took the opportunity to continue. It was some of the best food I've ever ate. I don't know what you did, but I hope you'll let me eat whatever you make whenever I'm able to. Averting her eyes, Hinata turned scarlet and let out a small, thank you, Naruto-kun. She was using every shred of willpower she had not to faint from his words. Naruto chuckled at her reaction but stayed quiet not to embarrass her anymore. Instead, he decided that he had waited long enough and opened the lid to his lunch to see what she had made today. His grin faltered when he saw what was inside. There was an assortment of rice balls, one of the things he disliked the most. To top it off, they were made to look like him as well. They had yellow tops to resemble his hair and grinned like he usually did. They even had his signature whisker marks. Why did it have to be rice balls? Naruto thought depressingly. They're always so dry and never have any flavor. And why do they look like me? That's pretty weird, and I'm not sure how I feel about eating myself. He then noticed Hinata had turned her gaze back to him and was giving him an expectant look. Gulping, he looked back at the rice ball thinking, well, now I have to eat it, especially after I just went on about how good her cooking was. Slowly, he inched his mouth towards the rice ball and took the smallest bite he could. As soon as he got a taste, though, his eyes widened. What? That's the best rice ball I've ever tasted. I didn't even know they could be this flavorful. Doubts gone. He rapidly consumed the rest and turned back to Hinata. He gave her a thumbs up and exclaimed, that was amazing, Hinata-chan. You made these rice balls take amazing. You're gonna make one heck of a wife. When he said that, Hinata's face burned scarlet and her thoughts went crazy. Wife. Marriage. Me with Naruto-kun. With almost visible steam coming out of her ears, she fainted and fell straight towards Naruto. Somehow it had seemingly slipped her mind that she was already promised to marry Naruto. Thinking fast, Naruto quickly caught her and leaned her against his shoulder. He sighed. She's such a weird girl. Using his hand that wasn't currently holding Hinata stable, he got out another rice ball. Taking a bite, he thought, still, even though she's weird, I'm starting to like her more and more. She's so nice and fun to be around. I can't help but want to see her more. Hearing her soft breathing, he glanced over at her resting on him. He took his hand and brushed away some of her hair that had fallen in front of her face. He paused and took a moment to observe her facial features again. She is really pretty too, he thought with a slight blush. I first thought she looked plain, but the more I see her, the more beautiful she looks. Realizing that he was staring at her and thinking such thoughts, he quickly looked away and shook his head. Trying to distract himself, he focused on eating the rest of his lunch. Still, he kept an arm around her to keep her steady and close to him. Listening close to every breath she took that filled him with a sort of happiness he didn't know how to describe. Naruto smiled as he recalled the time they had together yesterday. Although it fell when he thought about how fast Hinata had left after she woke up from fainting. She had made a quick apology and then bolted off, saying something about clan training that afternoon, giving him no time to say anything in response. Sighing, he muttered to himself, I know she was embarrassed, but I don't know what the big deal was. She was just leaning against me and I didn't mind it anyways. I guess I'll just have to tell her it's all right when I see her next. He would have told her this morning when he got the food from her, but she had just left it on his doorstep today. It had a note attached to it saying that she would have liked to see him, but she was running late for training with her team and didn't have the time. Shaking his head, Naruto thought, I'm sure I'll see her soon anyway. I can clear things up then and tell her about all the progress I've made at the same time too. The progress he was talking about was due to all the extra training he had been doing. After Hinata had left yesterday, Naruto decided to switch his efforts into his Rasengan and the Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu once again. After spending several hours yesterday and most of this morning practicing both, he had achieved significant progress. He was finally able to perform the Rasengan completely one-handed and had brought the time taken to form down to 1 second. It could still be brought down more to almost be instantaneous, but he was happy with the progress he had made. As for the Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu, he had almost mastered it. He was able to perform the jutsu reliably every time he tried. He even started using kunai and was able to get it down after only a few attempts. He just needed to practice a little more to be able to make the exact amount of copies he needed and not more or less, which was usually just a matter of experience and getting a feel for how much each duplication cost in terms of chakra. However, for now he was resting and decided that he needed to actually start eating the lunch Hinata had made for him. After taking the first bite, he was once again amazed by the cooking she did. Because he was very hungry from his training today, he quickly ate the rest of the meal and set it to the side. Closing his eyes, his thoughts drifted once more. For how much I wasn't sure about being married before, it's not turning out so bad so far. Hinata's so sweet and she's already helped me a lot. If getting married to her is always like this, I could probably get used to it. With that thought swirling in his head, his attention shifted to something else. Although, she's not the only one I'm getting married to. I don't know much about Temari, but she doesn't seem to be as shy or sweet as Hinata-chan. Hopefully we can get along though, and I'll try my best to make her feel welcome. Naruto slowly became more drowsy as he thought, and he started to become less aware of his surroundings. Before he fell completely asleep, he had one last thought. I'm not really sure when she's supposed to be arriving though. I wonder when we're going to see each other. With that, Naruto fell into a slumber, unaware that the question he asked himself would get answered so soon. While Naruto was taking his nap, Tsunade was standing at the entrance to the village. By her side were the two village elders, Koharu and Hamura. Even though they both had blank expressions on, Tsunade had her lips set in a fine line and was impatiently tapping her foot. Finally having enough, she growled out, "Where is that old perv? Our guests could be here any moment and he's not even here." As if he was being summoned, Tsunade heard a cry, "I have arrived." Looking up, she saw Jiraiya leap off the village wall and land in front of her. With a wide smirk on his face, Jiraiya turned to Tsunade and said, "I may be late, Heim, but if I knew you wanted me so bad, then I would have arrived Earl Dash." The rest of his sentence was cut off by Tsunade's fist driving him into the ground. Tick mark on her forehead. She berated him, "You good-for-nothing pervert. You were supposed to be here 20 minutes ago. This is one of the most important meetings for our village in years, and we need to show a strong front." Tsunade raised a fist to hit him again, but someone clearing their throat interrupted her. Tsunade's head swiveled over to look at the two village elders, who were giving the two of them disappointed expressions. Seeing she had Tsunade's attention, Koharu spoke up, "Lady Tsunade, while it may be true Master Jiraiya's behavior should not be excused, his punishment will have to come later. I can sense the approach of our guests and they're almost here." Tsunade huffed at that but followed her advice and lowered her hands to pull Jiraiya up to his feet. He was wobbling a bit but still had a goofy grin on his face. Tsunade whispered to him, "Don't think you're off the hook yet," and then went back to stand at the front of the group. Jiraiya pouted but wasn't given much time to dwell on it before a blur of motion came from the trees nearby. For figures had just dropped down in front of Tsunade and her group. In the front was Baki, one of Suna's top jounin, and behind him was his team. Baki and his team all quickly bowed, with Baki greeting Tsunade, "Greetings, Lady Hokage. I am Baki and this is my team. We are here to solidify the alliance between our two villages." Tsunade nodded and waved a hand to show they could stand straight again. "Greetings to you as well. I am pleased you all arrived safe and sound." After straightening back up, Temari let her gaze wander on the surrounding sights. She had seen it once before, but under the pretense of planning an invasion. Now she was seeing it for a different reason, as the place she would come to live for her future. "It's really happening," she thought with both sadness and a little bit of anticipation. "I'm finally here." Chapter 8. Doorway to the Future. Part 1. Tsunade stood in front of the shinobi from Suna, observing every detail she could. She had read the reports on the invasion from Suna and asked several of her subordinates for their opinions. So she knew most everything about the foreign guests that were before her. Still, she watched them herself and drew her own observations, if by nothing else than habit. First was the Jounin stationed in front of the team. She knew who he was as soon as she saw his facial markings and the cloth covering half his face. Baki, Suna's top Jounin and most likely one of the choices for the next Kazekage despite having no clan status. He's known for his high wind affinity and the ability to use it to cut an opponent on command. Tsunade mentally grimaced as she remembered something else from the reports. He's also the leading suspect for the one who killed Hayate and left Konoha unaware of the invasion. Even though we're making an alliance, I'll have to watch him carefully to make sure he doesn't try anything. After all, if he was given command of the Kazekage's 3 children, then he isn't someone to take lightly. Shifting her eyes over to the next person, she struggled to stifle a laugh. What in the world is he wearing? Is that a catsuit? Keeping her composure, she continued with her observations. Kankuro Sabaku, middle child of the late 4th Kazekage. He's the one we currently know the least about. We know he's a puppeteer and must be fairly decent based on the little bit that he showed off in the Chunin exams. The only other thing to be reported was his use of poisons and how one of his puppets worked that were included in the report Shino Aburame filed on their fight. Not a whole lot to work with, but most likely seems to be high genin to low Chunin level. We can keep an eye on him, but he shouldn't cause too many problems. Tsunade then focused on the shortest and, in her opinion, most dangerous one. She noted the red hair, facial tattoo, and large gourds strapped to his back that everyone talked about. However, the one glance of his eyes she got didn't have the barely restrained murder in them she kept hearing about. While she was slightly confused, she still looked at him closely. Gara Sabaku, youngest of the 3 and the container for the Ichibi, reported to have control over sand and carries a large gourd that serves as a personal supply of sand. However, he's supposed to be highly volatile and has an apparent craving for blood. Apparently, part of the reason the Sand's invasion failed was because the Ichibi didn't get to make it to the village after he transformed. Instead, Naruto was able to stop him by summoning Gamabunta, insane as it is that he was able to do that. I hope he doesn't hold a grudge against Naruto, or that could turn this alliance bad fast. Finally, she looked at the last person in their group and arguably the most important one. She had read about her but was still surprised when she saw Temari. She really is tall. She's not breaking any records, but she's definitely going to be one of tallest girls in her generation. Plus, she's clearly got to be built well, since I doubt that fan she's carrying around is very light. I can just tell this girl is going to be a jaw-dropper in a few years. She shook her head to try to refocus on what was important. Temari Sabaku, oldest child and only daughter of the 4th Kazekage. Known to have the highest wind affinity seen in over a decade and viewed as almost a prodigy in wind techniques. From what is in the reports, she uses her war fan as her main way to generate her techniques. Although, I'm sure that she could probably do most of them just fine without the fan. In her match against Shikamaru Nara, she also showed high strategic skills and the ability to adjust plans on the fly. She's most likely already mid to high Chunin rank and was only held back to be on her siblings' team and support them in the invasion. Compiling what she read with what she observed, she came to her own conclusions. The council seemed to be right on this occasion for once. She definitely will be a boon to our ranks. I'll have to have her observed under someone to get a feel for her full skills, but I'm sure that she'll only continue to impress me. Remembering something else that had been reported, she suppressed a snicker. Apparently she's also got a bit of a temper. Not bad enough where she would be insubordinate or fight with teammates, but she still has a bite to her. Barely resisting the urge to smirk, she thought, "Oh Naruto, you've definitely got a girl right here who will keep you on the straight and narrow." Deciding she had kept her guests waiting long enough, even though her observations only took a few seconds in her head, she spoke up, "If you would, follow me to the Hokage Tower so we can discuss your stay in the village." With that, she began walking towards the center of the village, Jiraiya at her side and the village elders following behind. The Sabaku siblings and Baki all exchanged glances before they started following everyone else. As they walked, they noticed shadows in trees and rooftops following them. That was to be expected, however. They assumed that they wouldn't be trusted right away, and the Umbu were probably letting themselves be seen on purpose to remind them of that fact. What they didn't account for was the stares they got from all the civilians and off-duty shinobi they saw as they walked through the village. Even though they understood that they were the ones to invade, it still didn't prepare them for any looks of fear or anger they saw. Temari especially was put off by it. I never really thought how the rest of the population would see us after we attacked, she thought glumly. I hope I don't have to live with everyone looking at me like this forever. After what seemed like the longest walk of their life, they finally arrived at the tower. Tsunade led them inside and up the stairs towards her office. Before walking in, she turned towards the two elders and addressed them. All right, you've seen that they've arrived. Me and Jiraiya can handle the rest of the discussion. The elders looked miffed at being shooed away but bowed anyway. As you wish, Lady Tsunade, Koharu replied before the two of them left. When they were gone, Tsunade opened the door and led them inside with her, taking up the Hokage seat. When everyone was settled in, she called out, "Cat! Wolf!" From the shadows, two Umbu agents jumped out and were at her side in an instant. Find Naruto Uzumaki and Hinata Hyuga and tell them to come here pronto. Wolf nodded and disappeared to do the task he had been assigned. Cat, however, lingered and stared at the Suna ninja for a moment. Baki was unnerved by the stare he felt emanating from the two blank holes in the mask she was wearing and the sense of anger that seemed directed at him. Cat! Go now, Tsunade shouted out once again. Shaking out of it, Cat shallowly bowed and responded, "Yes, my lady." With one last glance at Baki, she disappeared as well. Tsunade sighed before looking towards the Suna ninja once again. Folding her hands together, she said, "While we are waiting for the two of them to arrive, let's set some ground rules." She watched as they all straightened up and warily waited until she said more. "Even though you are guests here, Temari becoming a full-time one, we are still going to have to take some precautions. I doubt you have any ill intentions, but the rest of my village might not have the same perceptions. Most people will likely be wary of you, especially with the attack so fresh in their minds." Tsunade knew it was a low blow pilling the guilt on like that, but she wanted this treaty to work. After all, Naruto had to give up the option to choose who he loved, and she was unable to stop it. So she would make sure it wasn't in vain and use it to bring peace between their villages. And she would do what she needed to make sure that they got along. The four ninja from Suna looked at each other, silently communicating, until they all faced her again and reluctantly nodded. Seeing they were listening, she continued, "You will be free to explore the village. However, we will have Umbu guards following you while you are out and about. You will also be restricted from certain areas like the Umbu headquarters and the academy. If you need to see me, then you will be allowed into the Hokage Tower, but only after one of my shinobi clears you at the entrance." She waited until she could tell they understood. After seeing they did, she spoke again. "You will also be prohibited from molding chakra while in public. If you want to do so, then you will have to use one of our training grounds while a Konoha shinobi is present to observe you. Normally, I would prohibit you altogether, but I'm sure Naruto will want to train with you while you're here, so that's why I'm allowing this much." Surprised that they would even be allowed to do that, Baki and the siblings nodded. Tsunade then looked towards Temari, and her Temari stood straighter once she saw the attention was on her. Tsunade's gaze softened slightly before she addressed Temari. "Now, Temari, we will be discussing how you'll be allowed to live here in a little bit and what you can and can't do. However, for now, you'll have to follow the rules I just laid out while your team is still here. When they're gone, it will be more lenient for you, but there will still be conditions for you." Temari understood that while she would be staying in Konoha, she didn't have the trust of people there, so she would have to work towards gaining that trust and deal with it for now. Bowing her head, Temari replied, "Of course, Lady Hokage." Satisfied with Temari's response, Tsunade then turned her gaze towards Gaara. Narrowing her eyes slightly, she said, "Now as for you, we'll be watching you very closely. If we sense even a hint of demonic chakra from you, we won't hesitate to cut you down where you stand." Opening her mouth to protest, Temari was caught off guard when Gaara instead replied, "I understand." Everyone's gaze went to Gaara, who bowed in front of Tsunade. Taking advantage of their stunned silence, Gaara continued to speak. "I know that I was nothing but a monster when I came here for the Chunin exams. I've hurt several of your people, and I was originally here to aid in destroying your village." Bowing even lower, Gaara had more emotion in his voice than anyone had heard from him before when he shouted, "But I've changed. I've learned the error of my ways and know what I must do now. Because Naruto Uzumaki taught me how to live my life. He taught me that what's most important are your precious people and the bonds you treasure. So I will follow his example and give my all to protect everyone who is important to me." Gaara's bold declaration had shocked everyone in the room. Temari and Kankuro were staring at him wide-eyed, while Baki had a proud look on his face. Tsunade and Jiraiya were still showing blank faces on the outside, but on the inside they had similar thoughts. "Naruto, you really do have a way of changing people," Tsunade thought happily. To turn someone who didn't care one bit about who he hurt into a person who would protect their loved ones with all his heart. Not to mention the way you helped change me. You've got a real gift there, Naruto, and I hope to continue seeing how you use it. Meanwhile, Jiraiya had memories flying through his mind. More specifically, ones of his previous apprentice and the book he had wrote long ago. Minato, he thought with a sense of hope he hadn't felt in a long time. Your son is turning out exactly how you hoped he would. Maybe he can finally be the one that can bring true peace to this world. Unknowing of their inner thoughts, Gaara stood back up from his bow and looked Tsunade in the eye. With as much conviction as possible, he told her, "That's why I fully support this alliance. If anyone can help bring our villages together, it's Naruto Uzumaki. I would trust him not only with my life but come here with the utmost faith that he will protect my sister's life as well." When Gaara had finished saying those words, Temari was unable to hold her own emotions in anymore. Launching forward, she grabbed Gaara and pulled him into a tight hug. She pressed her face down into his shoulder to try and muffle the few sniffles that escaped her and hide any tears escaping. Unsure of what to do, Gaara slowly circled his arms around to Temari's back to hold her. Gaara then felt a hand clasp his other shoulder and turned his gaze to see Kankuro holding it, looking at him with a wide smile on his face. Gaara gave a small smile in return, and the three of them stood like that for a few moments longer. After they separated, they all glanced over to see Baki nodding his head in approval to Gaara's words with a smirk on his lips. Temari then looked at Tsunade and Jiraiya, who were still just watching them with a blank look on their faces. Flushing red slightly, Temari wiped her face quickly before bowing shortly and saying, I apologize for that." Tsunade waved her off, however, saying, "It's fine. It pleases me to know that Gaara holds Naruto in such high esteem." A small smile found its way onto Tsunade's face before she continued, "We still won't lighten our security, but this conversation does give me hope that we can move forward from our past sooner rather than later." Over in Training Ground 8, Kurenai was currently in a tree, pressed up against it to minimize her space. She had a cloaking genjutsu put on around her so she wouldn't be visible to the naked eye. It wouldn't be able to hold against someone proficient in undoing genjutsus, but for the purpose of hiding from the unaware it would suffice. The reason she was in hiding at the moment? Well, she was having tracking practice with her team. Since Team 8 was put together with the ultimate purpose as a tracking unit, she would always have at least one day a week where they practiced their skills as a tracking team. Sometimes it was just finding an item or target in a certain amount of time. Other times, she had one of them be the target and everyone else would hunt them down. This helped give her an idea of how their skills held up separately and also what each person added to the team. Plus, it helped to give her students a look into what their targets could do to hide or what they might be thinking while being chased. Today, she was the target that her team was chasing down, but she decided to add in some genjutsu detection practice as well. Since it was her specialty, she had of course taught all three of them the basic signs of detecting and dispelling genjutsus. Sadly, to her great dismay, none of her students showed promise in actually performing any genjutsu. Kurenai had figured Kiba wouldn't be able to, seeing as he lacked the finesse and subtlety that genjutsu often required. While Shino had the temperament for it, unfortunately his insects would be a problem. Even if he could perform the genjutsu himself, the individual chakras of all his insects would throw it off. He would never be able to perform a cloaking genjutsu unless either all his insects can harmonize their chakra or Shino himself is able to hide their chakra signatures with his own. Both of which would be exceedingly difficult. If she really wanted him to, Kurenai figured she could probably have Shino learn a genjutsu that affects the enemy's perception. However, it would most likely only be a basic one since Shino had decent chakra reserves and would probably never have the chakra control needed for high-level genjutsu. So Kurenai put it on the back burner for now, as Shino could use the time he would spend learning it on other things that would benefit his skill set more. Besides, she could always bring it up in the future if he ever had the time to learn it. Of course, the one she was really hoping to pass her knowledge on to was Hinata, her student she viewed like a little sister. Kurenai would have loved to have Hinata study genjutsu under her. Alas, it was not meant to be. While Hinata was very skilled at undoing genjutsu thanks to both her Byakugan and her chakra control, she didn't seem to have the aptitude for performing it. Even though Hinata had great chakra control, she actually had fairly high chakra reserves. While it was nothing outstanding like the reserves of Naruto or even Sasuke, she had some of the highest in her age group. While having high reserves didn't make it impossible to perform genjutsu, smaller reserves just made it easier. As they grow and their reserves get bigger, it would take more and more practice to get the fine control needed for genjutsu. Medical ninjutsu actually had a similar problem, although it was for a different reason. Medical jutsu needed fine chakra control as well, but it was concentrated on the chakra you were putting out. You had to accurately judge how much chakra you put into your techniques. Too much and you overload the patient. Too little and you don't heal them. That's why smaller chakra reserves were preferred for both, as it made it easier to know how much chakra you were using. Although medical jutsu would probably be slightly easier than genjutsu for people who had higher chakra reserves, since it focused more on the chakra you were putting out. Unlike genjutsu, which needed you to know how much chakra was currently in your body and be able to mold all of it correctly. For that reason, Hinata's higher chakra reserves made it more difficult to teach her genjutsu. Of course, if Kurenai asked her, she was sure Hinata would try her hardest to learn. But there was another reason Kurenai was reluctant to teach her. Hinata's clan would most likely take offense to it. The Hyuga clan were some of the most traditional people in Konoha. Anyone who was seen as going against tradition was looked down upon. And since the Byakugan allowed the user to detect genjutsu easier, genjutsu was seen as inferior to the Hyuga. So no one in the clan ever learned it, and if they did, they would be seen as inferior too. So Kurenai restrained from teaching Hinata genjutsu, not wanting to cause her any more problems with the Hyuga. It was after realizing all these facts that Kurenai began to focus more on her squad as a team than trying to pass on her genjutsu knowledge. She wanted to build up more team synergy and elevate their skills as trackers, so she devised the practices like she had now. Her students also continued to have training with their clans to work on their individual skills, and she gave advice whenever needed on what they could improve on. Although she lamented the fact that she didn't have a student to teach genjutsu, that didn't mean her skills had to go to waste. She still taught her team what genjutsu was and how it worked, including how to dispel basic ones. She was of the opinion that even if you couldn't use genjutsu, just having the knowledge could help save your life. Which brings us to the training that she was conducting today. Kurenai watched as her students came into view several trees away. Kiba was leading the group, stance low to the ground, almost as if he was ready to pounce at a moment's notice. Akamura was situated on his head like always, sniffing for any trace of Kurenai's scent. Shino and Hinata flanked Kiba, Shino with his calm demeanor and hands in his pockets, while Hinata was tense and had her Byakugan active. Standing perfectly still, Kurenai saw as Akamura yipped suddenly, causing Kiba to tense up. He then quietly said something to Hinata and Shino, who both nodded their understanding. Hinata poured more chakra into her eyes and looked around trying to find something. After a moment, she stopped and opened her mouth to speak to her teammates. From Kurenai's viewpoint, she could see Shino nod in response to Hinata's words, and then take his hands out of his pockets to allow bugs out of his jacket. The bugs flew in Kurenai's direction, and she knew then that she had been found. Instead of leading them on another chase, Kurenai decided to end it and undid her genjutsu, leaping back towards her team. When they saw her approach, Shino called off his bug's attack and Kurenai watched as they returned to his jacket. Resisting the urge to shiver, Kurenai thought, "I'll never get over how much those bugs creep me out." Instead, she clapped her hands together and said, "Well done! You found me in record time today, and you even managed to do it with me hidden in my genjutsu. Kiba let out a loud howl and then boastingly replied, "Of course we did. What did you expect? Team 8 is the best team out there." Calming down slightly, he added, "Although Hinata did a good bit of the heavy lifting today. She saw the signs of where you were headed before we did, and even managed to find you in your genjutsu with her Byakugan." Akamaru barked when Kiba finished, to show that he believed Kiba was right. Shino didn't say anything, but nodded his head slightly to show he agreed with Kiba's assessment. Kurenai looked over to Hinata to see that her face had turned red, and she was tapping her fingers together from the embarrassment of the praise towards her. Smiling in Hinata's direction, Kurenai happily said, "Oh, is that so? Well, I'm glad you're keeping up with your training, Hinata. It makes me proud to see you grow and flourish." It was nothing, Kurenai-sensei," Hinata answered, trying to wave off her praise. Still, Kurenai could tell how much her words meant to Hinata, as she was unable to hide the soft smile that was threatening to break across her face, and the unshed tears she saw gathering in her eyes. Wanting to spare Hinata of any more embarrassment, Kurenai called out, "All right. Well, how about we take a break for lunch before we get back into it?" As if he was waiting just for those words, Kiba pumped his fist into the air and yelled out, "All right, time to chow down." Glancing upwards, he asked Akamaru, "You hungry, boy?" Wagging his tail and panting, Akamaru yipped once and Kiba smirked at his response. Shino didn't make any kind of response, but his insects started to buzz louder, conveying some sort of emotion in Shino's place. Meanwhile, Hinata was shook out of her embarrassment by Kiba's yelling. Remembering that she had brought them food, she rushed towards her pack to retrieve the lunches. Returning after a moment, she opened it up and wordlessly handed meals to her teammates and teacher. She then got out a bowl and filled it with food for Akamaru, who barked and wagged his tail happily in response. Kiba grinned, seeing that Hinata had made them food again today. Turning towards Hinata, he told her, "Thanks, Hinata. I don't know why you started making food for us these past few days, but they've been amazing." Tilting his head slightly, Kiba then asked her curiously, "Although, why have they looked like it's food that seemed to be messed up in some ways?" Panicking at almost being found out, Hinata stuttered, "And no reason. I've just been practicing my sea cooking and made a few mistakes." Amused, Kurenai spoke up to save Hinata. "You shouldn't say stuff like that, Kiba. Hinata was extremely nice to bring us these lunches, so don't complain about how they look when she didn't have to do anything for us." However, in her mind, Kurenai thought, "Although, I'm sure I know why we're getting the rejects. I think I know who's getting all the food that she deems to be perfect in her opinion." Pouting at being called out, Kiba muttered out an apology to Hinata, who merely sighed in relief at not having to explain further. However, before they could relax further, the sound of leaves rustling caught their attention and they all tensed up. Looking up, they were surprised to see an Umbu member in a wolf mask looking at them. "Hinata Hyuga, you have been summoned by the Hokage. Make your way to the Hokage Tower immediately to see her," Wolf stated. With the message delivered, Wolf disappeared to return to his duties. Shaking off the surprise, Hinata quickly gathered her pack and started to run in the direction of the tower after saying a quick goodbye and bowing to her team. Blinking at the rapid pace Hinata left, Kiba spoke up questioningly, "Huh? What would the Hokage want with Hinata?" Shino saw the opportunity to provide his all-knowing wisdom and answered Kiba, "Perhaps she is being punished for serving food that is, as you said, messed up." Knowing that he was being made fun of for his careless speech, Kiba grew a tick mark and yelled back to Shino at why. "Shut up." Ignoring the squabbling from her other two students, Kurenai was lost in thought. "I'm sure that Hinata was called away because of the arrangement she's in. I wonder exactly what's happened with it though? Maybe that girl from Suna has arrived. If so, I'll have to talk to Hinata later and see how she's handling all of it." Naruto slowly opened his eyes and tiredly took a look at his surroundings. He became confused when he noticed that he seemed to be in someone's house and fell asleep sitting at their counter somehow. As he saw how big the house seemed to be, he began to panic slightly. "Oh crap! I've wandered into some stranger's house, and from the looks of it, they must be pretty rich. I better get out of here before they catch me," Naruto thought worriedly. Trying to be as silent as possible, he slowly started to get off his seat when a voice called out to him and he jumped in surprise. Here you go, Naruto-kun. One piping hot bowl of your favorite ramen. Head swiveling to the other side of the counter. He was stunned when he saw a woman putting a bowl of ramen on the countertop. The woman seemed to be somewhere in her late teens or early 20s. She had long dark blue hair that was put into a ponytail that cascaded down her back. She was wearing a simple yellow dress but currently had an apron over it from where she had obviously been cooking. However, what really drew Naruto's attention was her face. The woman had a rounded face with soft-looking cheeks that had a slightly red blush to them. Her lips were pulled into a shy smile that tugged at Naruto's sense of familiarity. The woman's eyes were the biggest shocker, though. She had two pale eyes, both with a hint of lavender in them, that were looking at him like he was the greatest treasure ever. Naruto knew those eyes and was unable to stop himself from exclaiming, Hinata-chan. Unable to comprehend how an older Hinata was in front of him, he frantically thought, this gorgeous woman is Hinata-chan. How did this happen? Desperate to get answers, Naruto asked Hinata, what are you doing? How did we get here? And since when did you get so? Naruto took a second to glance down from Hinata's face to the two large mounds standing beneath her apron. Big. Hinata saw his eyes moving down but didn't comment on it. Instead, she merely smirked and straightened up to thrust her chest out more, making Naruto's eyes widen. What do you mean, Naruto-kun? I'm making you lunch, and why wouldn't I do that in our own home? Hearing Hinata say that this house was their home sent a shock through Naruto's spine. Gasping, he stuttered, home? Hands shaking, he looked down and blinked at seeing how large his own hands seemed. He quickly brought his hands up to his hair and felt how his hair seemed to be slightly longer as well. Am I older too? Just what is going on here? He was knocked out of his thoughts when he saw Hinata move out from around the table to come beside him. Now that he was aware he was older, he noticed that, while Hinata was older, she was still on the shorter side compared to most other women. Meanwhile, it seemed that he had finally hit a growth spurt and towered over her with the top of her head only coming up to his chest. Unaware of his inner turmoil, Hinata pressed herself against his side, almost hugging him. Standing on the tips of her toes, she leaned up towards Naruto's ear to whisper to him, "Besides, I don't think I'm any bigger than normal. You certainly saw and felt them enough last night and this morning to tell if there was any difference." Backing away slightly, Hinata watched with amusement as a blush overtook Naruto's entire face. Burning with more embarrassment than he ever had before, Naruto's thoughts were on overdrive. Is this Hinata-chan? No way. Hinata-chan is super sweet and kind. She could never have thoughts like, whatever this is. Naruto opened his mouth to question her again when a sultry voice called out, I hope you two aren't starting something without me. Whipping his head in the direction of the stairs, Naruto was shocked to see another woman leaning against the guardrail watching them. Unlike Hinata, however, Naruto recognized this one right away. Temari. Naruto shouted out in surprise. Just as with Hinata, here was an older version of Temari, apparently living in the same house as them. Her hair was still in the same four-ponytail style she normally had, and she seemed slightly taller, but her clothing was definitely not something Naruto thought he would ever see her in. Wearing what he could only guess was one of his black t-shirts that was definitely too big on her. Naruto saw some creamy skin from where the collar had fallen slightly on her smaller frame. She wasn't wearing any pants either, leaving Naruto to trail his eyes over the exposed flesh of her long legs that ended about mid-thigh where his shirt covered up. Temari noticed his wandering eyes and leaned forward more with a grin to show off a little more of her own chest that didn't seem too far behind Hinata's. Naruto gulped at the action and began sweating slightly. He stared as Temari finished walking down the stairs, eyes watching her figure as she slowly descended. Every so often he would get a flash of purple at the top of her thighs, and he wasn't sure if he should be relieved or not that she was at least wearing underwear. When Temari finally reached the bottom, she made her way over towards Naruto and Hinata, her wide hips swinging side to side as she tried to keep Naruto's attention on her. I knew Temari was pretty, but was she always this womanly? Naruto thought, trying to keep his mind from wandering to places it shouldn't go. Although from all the curves and flesh that he's seen Temari and Hinata apparently have or will have, a tiny voice in his mind that sounded suspiciously like Jiraiya added, Naruto would have a hard time looking at either without these images popping up for a long time. As Temari approached, Naruto thought that Hinata might be upset or get jealous from all his attention on Temari. However, when Naruto glanced at Hinata, who was still clinging to his side, he saw that she was watching Temari with unblinking eyes. She even had a grin that was slowly growing, while her hand started to roam over Naruto's chest and her breathing became shallower. Naruto watched as Temari pressed her own body against his other side and put her head into the crook of his neck. Distantly, he noted that although she was taller than when he saw her last, he still seemed to be a few inches taller than her, although they both towered over Hinata by a good bit. Tensing as Temari's breath hit his neck, he was unprepared when she asked him with a pout, "So I'm just Temari today? Not your Mari-chan or even good old Temari-chan?" Naruto shivered at the words coming out of her mouth and the familiarity with how she spoke them. Hinata saved him from answering though when she giggled and said, "Oh, cut him a little slack, Mari-chan. He's had a long night and morning taking care of us. After all, it's not like we always get him to use his shadow clones." And I'm sure he was even more surprised when he saw that we had learned to make a shadow clone each. Even his famous Uzumaki stamina has to give out at some point. Rubbing her own hand on Naruto's chest, Temari let out a like she was thinking it over. After a moment, she replied, "Well, I suppose it's all right. It was definitely a night to remember." Leaning back to look Naruto in the eye, she gave him a mock stern glare and told him, "You'd better give me one of your foot massages later to make up for it though." Not knowing how to answer correctly, Naruto just rapidly nodded instead. Seeing that he agreed, Temari smiled and giggled, leaning back into Naruto. She glanced over towards Hinata and said, "I'm surprised you're up and cooking though, Nata-chan. I figured after the night we had you would be resting like me. After all, didn't you beat your record of how many Narutos you could take last night? And then you still got up early this morning to service Naruto." Hinata blushed at Temari's questioning but didn't deny anything. Instead, she merely had a pleased smile and replied, I can never get enough of Naruto-kun though. Besides, it makes me happy to please the two of you, whether that's in bed, cooking, or anything else. If both of you are happy, then I'm happy." Smile widening at Hinata's words, Temari said, "Well, I guess that's true. I always find myself wanting more of Naruto-kun as well." Growing a smirk, she shot a playful look towards Hinata and added, "Maybe I'll try to beat your record sometime soon." Hinata giggled at Temari's challenge, which made Temari break out into giggling too. Naruto stayed quiet throughout their whole exchange. Part of it was because he was shocked to the core to hear what they were talking about and apparently what they had all done. Another part of him was worried that if he spoke up, whatever haze seemed to be over them to cause this to happen would lift and they would accuse him of being a pervert and start punching him. He snapped out of his thoughts when he felt Temari's hand reach across his chest to grab Hinata's hand, rubbing his chest. Looking over at Temari, he saw she had a soft look on her face and heard her tell Hinata, "Make sure you take care of yourself too. Me and Naruto-kun both love you and we don't want you to work yourself to death taking care of us. You being happy makes us happy too. So let us take care of you sometimes too." Naruto found himself nodding along to what Temari was saying even though he felt like a stranger here. Looking at Hinata, he saw that she had tears gathering in her eyes. Sniffling, she took her free hand to wipe her tears away and answered, "I love both of you too. Don't worry, I won't overwork myself." Temari smiled and squeezed Hinata's hand, pleased with her answer. After Hinata calmed down, she perked back up, remembering something. "Oh, Mari-chan, let me get your food too." With that, Hinata squeezed Temari's hand back and separated herself from Naruto's side. Not before she gave him a small peck on the cheek though. As Hinata passed by the two of them to go back around the counter, Temari couldn't help herself and brought her hand down to give Hinata's rear a firm spank. Naruto gaped in shock at Temari's action, while Hinata squealed. Hinata blushed and asked, "Must you do that every time?" Grinning in response, Temari said, "Well, when you have such a large target, how could I not? I'm sure if I didn't do it, Naruto-kun would be grabbing a handful when you pass by." If Naruto had been paying attention to her words, he would have denied that he would do such a thing. However, he was distracted as his mind was replaying the moment Temari's hand struck Hinata's ass. I guess Hinata-chan's chest wasn't the only thing that grew. Naruto tried not to have a nosebleed, and the image of Hinata's large round cheeks jiggling when Temari made contact was burned into his head. His task became more difficult when he heard the next words that were spoken. Large smirk on her face, Temari stated triumphantly, "You can't complain, Nata-chan. You can't keep your hands off my ass when we're in bed anyway." Face burning a crimson red, Hinata was unable to deny anything. Instead, she merely continued walking towards the oven, muttering, "Well, where else am I supposed to put my hands? It's the biggest one I've ever seen, and Naruto-kun can't always hold it all himself." They both heard her muttering, and Naruto had an errant thought about it. Temari's rear is supposed to be even bigger than Hinata-chan's. Thinking back, he realized he had only seen Temari from the front and side when she was walking towards him and not the back. He was suddenly overcome by the urge to ask Temari if she could turn around so he could and oh, bad thoughts. I can't be like pervy sage. Temari merely shrugged at Hinata's grumblings and said, "What can I say? I've got a fat ass and everyone knows it. Only you and Naruto-kun get to see and touch it though, so I don't see what the problem is. It's the same with your huge tits that you try to cover up, but everyone still knows you have. More for me and Naruto-kun to enjoy though, so you won't find me complaining. Plus, you always seem to get louder whenever one of us gets our hands on those beauties under your shirt." Hinata sighed at Temari's crude words, although she rubbed her thighs together at the thought of the last time both Naruto and Temari got their hands on her chest. Shaking her head free of such thoughts, Hinata bent over to grab Temari's food out of the oven while she called out behind her, "Let's wait until we've eaten before such things at least." Temari was watching Hinata bend over though and had other thoughts on their mind. Temari licked her lips and quietly said, "I think me and Naruto-kun would rather eat something else right about now." Although she tried to be quiet, Hinata still heard her and felt an electric shock run through her body. Biting her lip, Hinata flirted back, "While I am not opposed to that, we shouldn't let the food get cold." Standing back up, Hinata slowly made her way back to them with Temari's meal in hand, aware of their eyes on her and the way her chest slightly jiggled with every step she took. This time it was Temari who was biting her lip, blush spreading across her face from the alluring woman walking towards her. Meanwhile, Naruto was watching Hinata approach and was thinking that, just because of the last few minutes, he finally understood why Jiraiya chased after women so much. Hinata put the meal down on the counter and pushed it towards Temari. With a smile that looked far too innocent for what she was surely thinking, Hinata spoke now. "Why don't the both of you clean your plates?" And then, taking a moment to slowly stroke both of their cheeks with her hand, she finished, "We can talk dessert." Naruto gulped loudly at her words, but Temari just grew the widest smile she had all day. Turning towards Naruto, she exclaimed, "You heard the woman. Don't just stand there gawking when there's so much at stake. It's time for you to wake up." Temari finished her sentence with a flick to Naruto's forehead. Then all Naruto saw was darkness. Gasping, Naruto woke up in a cold sweat. He looked around quickly and noticed he was leaning against one of the trees in Training Ground 7. Realizing he must have fallen asleep at some point, Naruto brought his hand to his forehead and tried to slow his breathing. However, when he glanced up, he shouted out in surprise at seeing a masked figure looking straight at him. "Aya! What the heck? Who are you?" The masked figure's shoulders started moving, almost like she was silently laughing. After a moment, she responded to his question. "I am one of the Umbu in service to Lady Fifth. You may call me Cat." Naruto was confused by her tone. He knew that Umbu agents were supposed to seem almost emotionless, but this one had an almost fond tone of voice. Putting it into the back of his mind, he cautiously asked her, "I'm okay. And what do you need from me?" Kat straightened up and replied in a professional manner, "Naruto Uzumaki. You are to report to Lady Fifth's office immediately. I have already informed your sensei of the arrangements." Scratching his head in confusion, Naruto thought, "Why would Lady Bachan want to see me? It probably can't be a mission if Kakashi-sensei isn't going." Can you tell me why she summoned me?" Naruto asked slowly. Kat shook her head though and said, "My apologies, but I'm not at liberty to say." Sighing, Naruto nodded his head in defeat and began to gather his things. When he was done, he was about to make his way towards the Hokage Tower when he saw that Kat was still staring at him. Raising an eyebrow, he spoke up, Is there something else you need to tell me? At his question, Kat shook out of whatever state she was in. Composing herself, she answered, "No. Sorry, I was just thinking about something. Please, continue on." With those words, she disappeared into the trees, leaving Naruto by himself. Naruto was confused at the interaction with her, but decided that he wouldn't be able to worry about it right now. Instead, he started to make his way to see whatever it was Tsunade needed from him. As he walked, Naruto was lost in thought on the dream he just had. Unlike most of his previous dreams where he barely remembered anything, every moment of this one was burned into his mind. He wasn't quite sure yet if that was a good or bad thing. What does it all mean, he thought, exasperated. Was all that just a figment of my imagination, or was it a vision of the future? Naruto shook his head at that line of thinking. No, what am I talking about? How would I even have something like that happen to me? Besides, there's no way that Hinata-chan and Temari will be like that in the future. Only pervy sage thinks of stuff like that. Temari and Hinata-chan are basically princesses. I'm sure they would be furious at even the thought of either of them acting like that. I've just been around pervy sage and Kakashi-sensei too much, and their dirty thoughts have infected my mind. Gaining a softer smile as he remembered something else in the dream, Naruto felt a little bit lighter. Although, even with how pervy they were both acting, I could tell how much they each cared for me and each other. The way they both looked at and touched me made me feel like I was the most important person ever. They even got along great with each other. There was teasing, but they clearly liked having the other one there. Naruto pictured their adoring eyes as they looked at him and each other and thought, I hope we can get along like that in real life. Even if it was just a dream, it let me see happiness that might really be possible for us, and I don't know if I could handle being told it wouldn't work. Feeling his heart skip a beat at having a life that he always hoped for, Naruto couldn't stop the wide grin that split his face. Noticing that he was only a few feet from the entrance of the Hokage Tower, Naruto let out a light chuckle. As excited as I am for that possibility, maybe it's for the best that I'm not seeing Hinata-chan today. She's amazing to hang out with, but I don't know what I would do if I saw her with those images still fresh in my mind. Almost as if the universe was playing a cruel joke on him. As soon he reached to open the door, a voice sounded from behind him. And Naruto-kun. Shivers went down Naruto's spine. He knew that voice anywhere, and even though it was said with her usual innocent tone of voice, he couldn't stop his mind from imagining it in the much more sensual tone that her older self had in his dream. Slowly turning around, Naruto was met with the shy gaze of Hinata. She was wearing her usual outfit, large coat and all, although she seemed to be slightly winded from something. In her eyes, though, Naruto saw a similar sort of adoration that her older self had when she gazed at him, even if it didn't seem quite as strong yet. Naruto glanced down at the top of Hinata's coat, and his brain saw fit to overlap the image of his dream Hinata straining against her apron top with the real Hinata in front of him. He shut his eyes immediately and berated himself in his thoughts. No, bad Naruto. You shouldn't be thinking of Hinata-chan like that. It's shameful, and she would surely be really upset with me if she knew about it. And Naruto-kun? Are you feeling okay? Knowing that he had to give her an answer and couldn't just ignore her, Naruto took a deep breath to calm himself down. Then his eyes shot open and he gave her a large grin, putting his hands behind his head. Of course, Hinata-chan. I was just surprised to see you is all. Hinata squinted her eyes to look at him. It didn't seem like he was lying to her, but he wasn't telling her everything either. Well, it's not like he always has to tell me everything, Hinata thought with a sigh. Even if I would like him to. Instead, she decided to ask him a question. What are you doing here, Naruto-kun? Are you meeting the Hokage? Relieved that she didn't inquire more about his behavior, Naruto nodded. Yeah. Lady Bachan sent an umbu to tell me to meet her here. Tilting his head, he asked, What about you, Hinata-chan? Why are you here? An Aumbu agent told me the same thing. Pressing the tips of her index fingers together, Hinata shyly asked, since it seems we're both here to see her. Would you like to go in tea together? Nodding his head rapidly, Naruto smiled widely and exclaimed, Yeah, let's do that, Hinata-chan. Plus, if you're with me, maybe Lady Bachan will go easier on me if I'm in trouble. Not giving her a chance to respond, Naruto grabbed her hand and started pulling her with him, saying, "Come on, let's go." Although he made sure to not pull her too roughly and take it slower since she had got onto him the last time he did it. Hinata was blushing at him holding her hand, but was content to be pulled through the doors and up the stairs by Naruto. She would always be happy with any affection from her crush, and he was even being gentler this time. So with a smile on her face, she giggled as they made their way through the Hokage Tower and eventually reached the door to her office. Naruto, being as subtle as he always is, knocked on the door once and then threw it wide open with no prompting whatsoever, yelling, "Hey Lady Bachan, we're here." With that, he pulled Hinata through the now open door. Note to self: teach Naruto-kun that he's supposed to wait for the person to tell him to enter after knocking. Hinata thought with a sweat drop as she followed Naruto inside. Both of them ground to a halt, however, when they saw that there were more people in the room than just Tsunade. All the noise in the room quieted down with Naruto's intrusion, and everyone turned their eyes to the two genin at the door. Naruto glanced at the person closest to the door when he entered, and all his bravado went out the window when he saw the blonde head of hair and the two beautiful green eyes staring at him. Temari. Chapter 9. Doorway to the Future. Part 2. Temari. Naruto rubbed his eyes at the sight of the Kazekage's daughter, thinking that he might be seeing things or still in a dream. However, she didn't disappear once he looked again, confirming that she was here in the flesh. He was so wholly unprepared for the appearance of Temari that he hadn't even noticed that the other Sand siblings were in the room or that everyone was staring at him and Hinata. Hinata, for her part, was also stunned by the presence of Temari, but she mostly kept her composure. "She's already here? But I'm not ready," she thought worriedly. Glancing at Temari, a slight frown made its way to her face. "I had forgotten how beautiful she is, not to mention how tall and confident in herself she looks." Suddenly feeling self-conscious, Hinata thought, "Oh no, what if Naruto-kun likes her more than me? I'm so plain and shy and small. Meanwhile, she's breathtaking. Plus, what if Naruto-kun is into older women? I can't compete with that." Coming out of her thoughts, Hinata noticed that everyone was looking at her and Naruto. Feeling embarrassed by both the attention and how much Temari outclassed her in her opinion, Hinata tried to hide herself behind Naruto as much as she could, although she still kept a tight grip on his hand, and the warmth from it made her feel slightly better. Temari's face was composed as she observed Naruto and Hinata when they entered, but her mind was a whirlwind. Well, it looks like Naruto is just as loudmouthed as he was back in the Chunin exams. And he's still wearing that orange eyesore of an outfit. I'll have to do something about that if I have to be around him all the time. Watching Naruto as he continued to gape at her and try to see if she was real or not, she had to resist the urge to sigh. "Tell me again, how this is the guy we're hinging our whole alliance on. I know Baki told us about how powerful the Uzumaki clan used to be, but looking at him I just can't see it. Even if he did beat Gaara." Still, Temari thought as a small smile threatened to cross her face. "I suppose he could be worse. I'm glad he's lively and not dark or depressing. I've had enough of that living with Gaara for most of my life. Plus, those whisker marks do make him look pretty cute in my opinion." Blinking in surprise at herself thinking like that, Temari decided to focus on the other person in the door before she could pursue that line of thought more. However, almost immediately after Temari looked at her, Hinata tried to hide herself behind Naruto. "There's the timid heiress as well," she thought pensively. "Looks like she still has her same problems. It's good that she's not a chatterbox or gossip from what I've seen, but I hope she doesn't stay completely silent. She'll have to be more confident in herself if she wants to succeed as a kunoichi." Noticing Naruto and Hinata's linked hands and how close Hinata was pressing herself into Naruto, Temari had to stop herself from frowning. "That's different though. Seems like that they're a lot closer than they were before." Inwardly sighing, Temari thought, "Looks like I've got my work cut out for me. I'll do my best for my village, but hopefully I'm not just a third wheel to the two of them." Glancing at Hinata, Temari watched as the heiress's head slowly peeked over Naruto's shoulder and looked at her with big doe eyes. Realizing that Temari was looking at her, Hinata blushed red and ducked her head back down to hide herself again. Feeling the urge to let out a groan, Temari thought exasperated, and she's adorable too. Why did they both have to be so cute? It's like they know my weakness for cute things. Unaware of the thoughts going through the two girls' heads, Tsunade had her hands folded and watched with a motionless mask as the most important people to their alliance fumbled around each other. She wanted to speak up and clear the air, but she knew it was important for them to be able to work things out themselves. Having the leader of the village step in and control everything wouldn't fit that purpose very well. However, Tsunade soon developed a tick mark when she heard frantic scribbling and quiet giggles coming from close to her. Shooting a side eye to where Jiraiya was located, she wasn't surprised when she saw him writing in a notebook while taking glances at the scene in the doorway. She clenched her jaw, frustrated that he wasn't taking it seriously at all. Instead, here he was using it as inspiration for that smut he calls art. And the worst part was that she couldn't even call him out on it without making a scene. Fortunately for Tsunade's sanity, someone else decided to help move things along. Gaara moved from where he was passively watching, towards the door where Naruto was at. Naruto jumped in surprise when Gaara walked in front of him, just now realizing that he was also in the room. He felt Hinata tense up slightly from behind him, and Naruto was worried that Gaara was mad from their last battle, but was shocked when he instead held out his hand. Tentatively, Naruto reached out with his free hand to grasp Gaara's own, and was pleased when no sand came to stop him. Instead, Gaara smiled and said, "Naruto Uzumaki, it is good to see you again." Naruto smiled back in response, realizing that Gaara was different to how he was before. "It's good to see you too," Naruto replied back. "I didn't know you were coming. How have you been since the Chunin exams?" "I've been well," Gaara answered with a slight uptick in his otherwise monotone voice. "I want to thank you, Naruto Uzumaki. Ever since our fight, I have been wondering about the meaning of my life, and I've decided to follow your ways. I want to live to protect my precious people and show that I've changed. It might take a long time for people to accept me, but I won't be deterred." Naruto's smile turned much softer with Gaara's words, and took his other hand out of Hinata's grasp to clutch Gaara's shoulder with it. "I'm happy for you, Gaara," Naruto said. "I'm sure that you'll have the acceptance that you're searching for before you know it." "I hope you're right," Gaara replied. Gaara's mouth briefly ticked into a smirk when he said, "Maybe I'll follow in your footsteps and aim to become the Kazekage of my village. I might even end up getting there first." Laughing out loud at the challenge from Gaara, Naruto smirked back. "Sounds good, buddy. But I'm not letting you beat me without a fight. I'll be giving it my all to become Hokage, so you better go all out too." Gaara let out a chuckle at Naruto's exclamation. "I would expect no less. You might have your hands full with other matters in the meantime, however." At Naruto's confused expression, Gaara decided to elaborate what he meant. "You are entering into an arranged marriage to unite our villages after all, with my sister no less. I'm sure it will help your chances of becoming Hokage, but it will not be easy." Naruto sheepishly rubbed the back of his neck. He wasn't used to so much attention being on him for something that wasn't a prank. "About that, are you really all right with Temari marrying me?" "Of course I am," Gaara answered confidently. Seeing that his answer stunned Naruto, Gaara continued, "While it's not how I would have wanted it to happen, you are the best choice for her. She is important to me and deserves the best. Who better than the person who defeated me and showed me the error of my ways? I know that you'll treat her right and protect her as one of your precious people." Naruto and Hinata were both shocked at Gaara's confession. "Oh, Naruto-kun, you really are amazing," thought Hinata. Hinata remembered how terrifying Gaara had been in the Forest of Death and the callous way he killed anything in his way. Not to mention the brutal way he had maimed Rock Lee. To be able to change someone like that was something only Naruto could do in her mind. Though she was embarrassed by what Gaara said, Temari still managed to smile at her brother. She knew how he felt, but she didn't know that he would go ahead and tell everything to Naruto. Still, it was good to see her brother so relaxed and trusting of someone. He needed a friend, and it wouldn't hurt to have her future husband and her brother to be on friendly terms. Once Naruto recovered from his shock, he gave Gaara a blindingly wide grin. "Of course I'll treat her right, Gaara. She's both your sister and my future wife, so she's important to both of us. I promise. I'll protect her with all my strength." After all, Naruto turned to look at Temari, who felt chills from his gaze and bold declaration. "I always keep my promises. Gaara nodded his head, grateful that Naruto was the same as he was before. Turning his attention to the girl still behind Naruto, Gaara bowed to her and said, "You must be Lady Hinata, heiress of the Hyuga clan." Hinata stood up straighter when she was addressed. She was still nervous, mostly due to the fact that Gaara frightened her, but she swallowed her fears and inched out from behind Naruto. Returning Gaara's bow, she stuttered out, "Why yes, I am Hinata Hyuga, Lord Gaara." "Just Gaara is fine," he replied, waving off any protests she might have. "Naruto obviously places trust in you, so I will as well. I would ask that you look after my sister as well. She is a stranger in a foreign village, and I would feel better if she had a friend to help her adjust." Hinata's mouth fell open, surprised that he would ask her to be Temari's friend. Once she got over her shock, however, Hinata smiled and nodded, knowing how uncomfortable Temari would be in her situation. "Of course, I would be happy too," Hinata said with a sincere smile. Temari felt relief when she heard Hinata accept Gaara's request. She would never admit it, but one of her greatest fears when she had been told that she would have to move to Konoha was that no one would ever accept her being here. She was prepared to carry the burden for the sake of her village, but it would be miserable being treated like an outcast all the time. Temari still held reservations about how much of a friend Hinata would really be to her, but was slightly more hopeful that they would get along. From her place at the Hokage's desk, Tsunade hid a smile underneath her folded hands. She was worried that tensions would tear this alliance apart before it even began, but these kids proved it different. Satisfied that everything was going well, she decided it was a good time to inform them of everything she needed to. Clearing her throat, Tsunade waited for everyone to quiet down and look at her before she addressed them. "Well, now that you're all acquainted, why don't we go ahead and talk about why I've called you all here?" Naruto sheepishly rubbed the back of his head and exclaimed, "Oh yeah, go ahead, Lady Bachan." Everyone else decided merely to nod their head in acknowledgement, although the shinobi from Suna's sweat dropped on the inside, wondering how Naruto got away talking to his leader like that. "Obviously, Temari has arrived in the village as per our agreement," states Tsunade started. "While she is here to be married to you, Naruto, that won't be happening for a few years. In the meantime, she will be joining our shinobi forces, so I figured we should go ahead and discuss what that entails." Tsunade shifted her eyes to Temari, who put all of her focus on what Tsunade was saying. Pleased with Temari's professionalism, Tsunade elaborated, "Unfortunately, due to the importance of this alliance and Temari's status, she can't be put on just any team. Therefore, I have decided to place her on Team 7 with you, Naruto, as an additional member." "Really? She's gonna be on our team?" Everyone looked over to Naruto, who was almost visibly shaking with excitement. Temari was surprised that he would be so eager to be on the same team as her. Meanwhile, Hinata pouted that she got to be on the same team as Naruto. "Aw, why can't I be on Naruto-kun's team too?" Nodding in confirmation to Naruto's exclamation, Tsunade explained, "Yes, Kakashi is one of our best jounin and is highly capable to watch over Temari." Baki and Gaara both nodded their agreement to Tsunade's logic. Temari grit her teeth at the thought of having to be watched, but understood her position as both an important diplomat and former enemy. She let it go and resolved to show her loyalty through actions instead. "Stay calm. Just do what you do best, Temari, and prove yourself to them," Temari told herself. Temari being on the same team as Naruto is also of great benefit, Tsunade continued. "The two of you will have a lot of people watching to make sure this alliance will work. So being on the same team and showing you can work together will go a long way to quiet some people's worries." Naruto gulped while Temari had a hard look across her face. They both ended up nodding though, aware of the roles they would have to play. Pleased that they understood, Tsunade said, "Finally, this helps Team 7 as well. Besides the few fire jutsus that Sasuke knows, Team 7 is severely limited on long-range options. With Temari being a long-range specialist, she'll carve out an important niche in the team and provide valuable assistance." Adopting a little bit of a smirk, Temari bowed. "Understood, Lady Fifth." Straightening back up, she was glad that they took her talents into consideration. She was proud of her skills and would have been frustrated if they tried to put her in a team where they weren't of much use. This way she could keep doing things in her style, kicking ass and looking good doing it. Now, as I am aware, you were still a genin when you took the exams. Most likely because you were kept that way to be on your brother's team, Tsunade stated. Temari was confused but confirmed her suspicions anyway. Yes, Lady Fifth. There was no one we could assign to be on Gaara's team since he would kill anyone but me and Kankuro. So, it was decided that I would be held back to be put on their team. Gaara looked away, regretful at the pain his past caused. However, Naruto putting a hand on his shoulder and Temari shooting him a small smile eased his worries slightly. Once their little moment was over, Tsunade continued, normally, you would have to start as a genin when you transferred here. But, after reviewing the information we have on you, as well as the knowledge that you were only a genin in name, I have decided to go ahead and make you a chunin. Mouth open in surprise, Temari only managed to stutter out, Thank you, Lady Hokage. She heard someone yell out, Temari, you're a chunin already. That's so awesome, and she knew who it was immediately. She looked over to her brothers and sensei who were all giving her proud looks and smiled at her. She averted her gaze, not wanting to start tearing up. She even saw Hinata giving her a soft smile. It might be late and not even for my own village. But I finally managed to do it, Temari thought happily. Deciding she should clear up some things before everyone got too ahead of themselves, Tsunade cleared her throat. When everyone turned their heads back to her, she said, now, this position does come with a few conditions on it. It's on a trial basis, so if either me or Kakashi thinks you're not ready for it, I will have to demote you back to genin. Also, even though you aren't a genin, Kakashi will still be your superior and you must follow his orders. Any other particulars about how your rank affects the team will be addressed by him. Temari nodded, knowing that she could still have her privileges revoked. She would just have to keep working hard and show that their trust in her wasn't misplaced. Good, Tsunade said, seeing she understood. I will be informing Kakashi of the arrangements later. I would like for you to show up to Team 7's training tomorrow so you can get to know them. I'm sure that Naruto can show you the way. Tsunade reached for something below her desk and pulled out a Konoha Hayate. Putting it on the desk, she slid it towards Temari. With that said, congratulations, Temari. We're glad to have you here. Temari grasped the Hayate in her hand and looked down on it in contemplation. Slowly, she took of her Suna Hayate around her neck with her other hand. Rubbing the Suna inscription with her finger, she turned towards Baki and reluctantly held it out toward him. However, to her surprise, he shook his head, saying, keep it, so you always remember where you come from. Feeling relieved, Temari let a soft smile grace her face, before she nodded and put the Suna Hayate in her pack. She then tied the Konoha one to her neck and bowed towards Tsunade. Thank you, Lady Fifth. I won't let you down. I have faith that you won't, Tsunade replied. Closing her eyes for a moment, Tsunade thought about the possible ramifications of what she was about to disclose. After thinking it through, she opened her eyes and looked straight towards the Suna shinobi. Now, I believe that I should tell you about the true importance of this union. Be warned, though, it is of the utmost importance that this information remains a secret. Concentrating on Gaara and Kankuro, she addressed the two of them. I am only letting the two of you listen to this because Temari would have to know anyway. I decided to tell you as well out of courtesy, due to being her only remaining family. However, if either of you let one word of this slip, there will be consequences. She punctuated her statement with her fist slamming on her desk, causing a slight crack to form. Seeing this, Kankuro started to sweat and gulped slightly, although Gaara stayed stoic and only nodded. Confident that she had made her point, she glanced at Baki and said, I will allow you to tell the Suna Council of this as well. They will be beholden to the same guidelines, though. If I find out that one of them leaked this information, there will be war. Treaty or no treaty. Baki sensed the killing intent directed towards him by Tsunade and paled. Not wanting to get on the bad side of one of the Sannin, he quickly agreed. Why yes, Lady Hokage. Satisfied that he agreed, Tsunade toned herself back down. Just as she was about to begin speaking again, Jiraiya spoke up. Perhaps you should let me explain this next part, Haim. Tsunade glared at him slightly for interrupting her, but went ahead and motioned for him to continue. Sighing slightly, Jiraiya looked at the Suna shinobi and started, Are any of you aware of the Uzumaki clan? Temari answered for them, yes. Baki-sensei informed us when we were told of this arrangement. He said that they were infamous for their high chakra pool and vast knowledge of fuinjutsu. But he also mentioned that they were wiped out several years ago. Nodding, Jiraiya continued, "That's all true. The Uzumaki were both respected and feared for their prowess. In the end, several villages came together to destroy them because they feared what the Uzumaki could become. However, even though Yuzushigakure was destroyed, the Uzumaki weren't completely wiped out. One was already in Konoha when Yuzu was attacked, and there is always the possibility of other survivors scattered throughout the continent." Naruto's head perked up at hearing there could be other Uzumaki out there, though he didn't interrupt Jiraiya to ask more. The Suna siblings were listening intently, interested in what Jiraiya would say, although Baki had a growing suspicion that he knew where this was going. Not wanting to keep them waiting, Jiraiya smiled. The Uzumaki that was here in Konoha was known as Kushina Uzumaki. She was pretty young at the time and was living in Konoha as part of an agreement with Yuzu. After the attack, she was the last known living Uzumaki. "Kushina Uzumaki," Temari said, tilting her head. Looking over to Baki, who had his eyes closed, she asked, "Do you know her, Baki-sensei?" Baki opened his eyes upon hearing her question and nodded. "I do, or rather I know of her. She was a fairly well-known Konoha shinobi who was in the bingo book for a time. She was called the Red Death, due to both her striking red hair and fiery temper. It was said that she had great skill in both kenjutsu and fuinjutsu, although she was reported to have died during the Kyuubi attack." At the mention of his mother's death, Naruto flinched and looked to the side. Hinata noticed this and reached for his hand, giving it a soft squeeze of reassurance. Gaara and Temari both saw him look away as well. Gaara filed it away to ask him later, while Temari's expression fell slightly. To her, something about Naruto's sad expression tugged at her heartstrings. "Yes, Kushina was a valuable member of Konoha's shinobi," Jiraiya said. "She was so strong that she was even considered for the position of 4th Hokage before that honor fell to Minato Namikaze." Jiraiya's face took on a grimace before he added sadly, "She did end up dying in the Kyuubi attack. With her death, the last known member of Uzumaki lineage would have died." He observed as the faces of the Suna siblings turned slightly more somber, Temari's more so than her siblings. At least that would have been the case, if not for the fact that there was one other Uzumaki alive. Watching as everyone perked up slightly, Jiraiya continued with a small smile on his face. "It was kept under pretty tight wraps, but Kushina was actually pregnant before the Kyuubi attack. We didn't want other nations to know that the last Uzumaki was weakened and about to give birth to another Uzumaki. So the knowledge was limited and Kushina ended up giving birth before she died. That child was Naruto." Temari glanced at Naruto, who was still hiding his expression from the rest of them. "So he never even knew his mother," she thought sadly. "Mine died early, but at least I got a few years with her. Unlike both him and Gaara." Before she could get depressed any more from that knowledge, Kankuro spoke up and asked, "So that's why Naruto was chosen for this? Since he's technically the heir to the Uzumaki clan? Is that why you're making him take a second wife as well?" Tsunade looked at him stoically for a second before answering yes and no. "Naruto being of the Uzumaki clan is a very important factor, but it's not the only one. Haven't you noticed that I haven't made any mention of Naruto's father so far?" Kankuro tilted his head in confusion. I did notice, but I figured he was just some civilian or something and not that important." Roaring laughter shook everyone where they stood. They quickly all turned their attention towards Jiraiya, who was holding his sides and hunched over. "Ha ha ha. Not that important. What's so funny, Lord Jiraiya?" Temari asked cautiously. Jiraiya chuckled a few more times before standing back up straight. He glanced to Naruto out of the corner of his eye and saw that he had a small smile on his face. Jiraiya's mouth upturned slightly before he answered Temari. "Well, if you must know, Naruto's father was actually someone very well known. He did come from a civilian family, but he was hailed as a prodigy and rose through the shinobi ranks quickly." With a fond smile, Jiraiya said, "He was my student and one of the strongest shinobi to ever live, Minato Namikaze, the 4th Hokage." All three of the siblings' eyes widened. Temari stuttered out, "T to the 4th Hokage." Her mind was racing with thoughts of what that could mean. He's the son of the Yellow Flash. Is that why he was able to beat Gaara? Because he is the son of such strong people. What? Kankuro yelled out, leveling his finger to point at Naruto. You're telling me that Shrimp is the son of the fourth Hokage? No way. Hinata and Tsunade both had a tick mark at Kankuro's words, but before they could say anything, Temari hit him upside the head. Kankuro clutched the back of his head and turned to say something to Temari, but settled down seeing her glare at him. Ignoring his siblings' antics, Gaara looked at Baki and asked him, "Were you already aware of this?" Gaara's question got the attention of both Temari and Kankuro, who shot Baki curious gazes. Baki sighed before saying, "We had our suspicions but didn't know for sure. I will admit it is one of the main reasons we chose Naruto though." With a slightly hurt expression, Temari asked, "Why didn't you tell us?" Baki looked at Temari and answered, "We had no concrete evidence. It wouldn't have done any good to inform you if it had turned out to be false. Or worse, if it was true and you told someone, which hurt our standing with Konoha, who wanted to keep it secret. Besides, all we had to go off of was the fact that Lord Jiraiya trained both of them and their similar looks." Finishing his statement with a gesture to the wall, Temari turned around to see where the pictures of the previous Hokage were. Her eyes immediately honed in on the fourth Hokage's portrait and she felt like kicking herself. They look just alike. Just add some whisker marks and it would be like Naruto had only aged a few years. As she was gazing at the fourth Hokage's picture, Temari's cheeks started to turn slightly pink against her will. He really is handsome though. Minato Namikaze was supposed to be one of the most sought-after bachelors back then. Women went crazy for him wherever he went. I thought it was all just an exaggeration, but looking at him now, I kind of get it. Temari glanced over to where Naruto was and felt her face get slightly hotter. If Naruto is his son, then that means he'll probably look like this in a few years. That thought sent an electric shock through Temari's system, and she had to resist the urge to shake her head in front of everyone. No. Bad thoughts, Temari. Trying to focus on something else, she turned her head back towards Tsunade. Though not before she saw that Hinata was looking at the same picture too and had an even deeper blush than she did. "Yes, it's true," Tsunade said. "Naruto is the fourth Hokage's son, although this information is kept under tight wraps. Besides the people in this room, only the Shinobi Council and 2 others know of this. That's why I stress it's so important to be a secret. This kind of knowledge can cause wars if the wrong people find out about it." Everyone nodded at her command, but Temari had a thought bugging her. Deciding to speak up, she asked, "Wait, does this mean that Naruto has always known about his parents? Did he become the dead last on purpose to try to hide that fact?" Naruto winced at her comment and Temari felt like kicking herself for her lack of tact, especially after the slight glare that Hinata seemed to shoot towards her. Shaking her head, Tsunade shot down her theory. No, Naruto was never told of his parentage as a child. He was only told a few days ago when he was informed of this marriage. Now Temari just felt like a jerk. Good going. Now they think you're an asshole. Intent on rectifying her mistake, she turned towards Naruto and bowed, saying, "Forgive me, Lord Naruto. I didn't mean to offend you." Immediately waving his hands in front of him, Naruto tried to downplay it. "And no, it's fine. You didn't mean any harm by it. And just call me Naruto. I only just learned about my parents and I'm not comfortable with titles like that." Grateful that he wasn't upset, Temari stood back up and said, "Thank you, Naruto." Then she shot him a warm smile which caused his cheeks to be dusted pink. Turning his head to the side, he muttered out, "No problem." Temari glanced over at Hinata, who had softened her glare but was still keeping a watchful eye on her. Resisting the urge to sigh, Temari thought, "I'm glad he's so forgiving. Still, I'll have to be careful and not slip up anymore. I don't want them to have any reason to hate me." Turning her gaze back over to Tsunade, Temari had another thought. I guess his parentage isn't his source of strength though. If he didn't know about them until recently, then he couldn't have been trained in their techniques either. How did he get so strong then? Gaara mentioned that it's because he fights for his precious people, but it can't be that simple. Can it? Anyways, Tsunade spoke up. It's because of who Naruto's parents are that Konoha decided Naruto would have 2 wives instead of just Temari. I'm not sure how much of this is known in Suna, but whenever a new Hokage is chosen, They are given the option to start their own clan if they are not already part of one. It's how the Sarutobi clan came to be when the third Hokage was chosen. Although they are still small at the moment and currently have no spot on the council since the only eligible member as of now wants nothing to do with politics. Baki saw where she was going with this. So that means that Naruto is the heir to 2 clans then? Am I correct, he asked. Nodding, Tsunade answered yes. Minato had planned on starting his own clan. The compound had even been ordered to be constructed. However, between all his duties in taking leadership and him wanting to keep his marriage secret until Naruto was born, he was never able to get all the details straightened out before his untimely death. And with his son being hidden from all but a select few, the idea of a Namikaze clan eventually faded from everyone's minds. Turning her attention towards Hinata and Temari, she addressed the both of them. That's why there's 2 of you. You will each be the matriarch of one of the clans, with Naruto being the head of both. Any children that you have will belong to whichever clan you are the matriarch of. Of course, any specifics in how they interact with each other can be decided between the 3 of you in your own time. It might sound like we're trying to divide the 2 of you, but we're not. We actually encourage the 2 clans to get along and be close since you'll be part of the same village anyways. Temari's mind was whirling with all the revelations she had been subjected to in such a short time. She had suspected there was something different about Naruto, but to be the heir to 2 different clans? And she was supposed to be the matriarch of one? She had come here under the assumption that she was going to be helping him revive the Uzumaki clan, but she didn't suspect she would be helping to lead one. She figured that Hinata would be doing most of that while she was relegated to becoming a concubine, bearing him children. Part of me is relieved that isn't going to be the case, honestly. I won't necessarily be seen as inferior and my children won't be lesser because of it, she thought. Another part of me is terrified though, having so much responsibility put on me, a foreigner. Not to mention what it could look like for me if my clan doesn't live up to expectations. Hinata had already been informed several days ago, so she was handling it a little better. She was still nervous though from all the expectations that were being put on them. I hope I don't mess it up for Naruto-kun, she thought, pushing her fingertips together. Jiraiya noticed the state that the 2 girls had turned into and decided to try to help them out. Looking at Tsunade, he gave her a wide grin. Tsunade, don't you think our guests here deserve a little bit of a break? We've done nothing but tell them about responsibilities when they might want to go look around the village some. Besides, it's not like any of this has to be resolved immediately. Temari is here to stay and we can figure it all out later. Tsunade sighed but agreed with Jiraiya. Very well. We still have to discuss some things, but I suppose they can be put off till another time. She then looked at Naruto and Hinata and asked, why don't the 2 of you show them around some? Maybe get some lunch or something. Naruto nodded eagerly while Hinata gave a much more controlled one. Sure thing, Lady Bachan. You can count on us. With that, he started to walk towards the door while telling the Suna shinobi, come on guys. I know just the place we can go. Before he could get all the way out the door though, Tsunade called out to him, by the way Naruto, I'll be meeting up with all of you again later to show you your new house. I'll send an umbu to collect you when I'm ready. Halfway through the doorway, Naruto almost fell down in shock. Crap. I forgot that I'm supposed to be going to a house with Temari. I'm not prepared at all. Throwing on a fake grin, he looked back at Tsunade and exclaimed back, sure thing, Lady Bachan. Showing more excitement than he felt, he continued on his way, Hinata and the Suna siblings following after him. As she was almost out the door, Temari glanced back at Baki and asked, aren't you coming with us, Baki-sensei? However, he shook his head and said, no, I've got a few more details to discuss with the Lady Hokage. Go ahead and I'll catch up later. Temari looked reluctant but bowed and hurried to catch back up with everyone else. Once they were gone, Tsunade summoned one of her umbu and said, go get Kakashi for me. I have to inform him of the changes to his team. The umbu nodded and disappeared. Sighing, she glanced at Jiraiya and Baki, who both seemingly had things to ask her. Pinching her nose in frustration, she muttered out, I need a drink. So over there is the pharmacy and right beside it is where a lot of people get their groceries. If you keep heading that way, you'll eventually get to the hospital. Not that I like to go there. Oh, and over this way is that barbecue place that Team 10 is always hanging out at. Naruto had taken to his orders of showing around the Suna siblings with gusto. He was currently leading them down one of the main streets of the village, pointing at everything and anything to tell them what made it awesome in his opinion. Hinata walked close to him and seemed content to let him ramble on and do all the talking for them, although she kept glancing at everyone they passed and looking back towards their guests. Temari and Kankuro were only halfway listening to what he was saying though. They were more so focused on their surroundings and the other people on the street. Just like before, a good portion of people would send scathing looks in their direction or point and whisper about them to someone else. They were expecting this kind of treatment and so they weren't surprised by it. What confused them though was that for as many glares and comments they got, another one would seem to be because of Naruto. Temari kept swapping her gaze between watching Naruto and looking at people's reactions. What's going on here, she thought. I get why they're looking at us with hate, but why would they do that to Naruto? Sure, they don't know who his parents are, but why would they treat some random orphan like that? She tried to think back on all the reports that she had read on Naruto and everything she had observed in the Chunin exams. Doing that didn't seem to help her any though. The only thing I can think of is because he supposedly used to pull pranks in the academy. But that shouldn't be enough to have this many people dislike him. What do they know that we don't? Glancing at Kankuro, she saw he was just as perplexed as she was. Trying to see if her youngest sibling had noticed anything, she looked at Gaara and was surprised that he wasn't paying attention to any of the citizens. Instead, he was giving his full attention to Naruto, who was talking about the backstory of some building they were walking by. Huh? Why is Gaara not fazed by any of this, she thought, tilting her head. Surely he notices all the attention that we're drawing and how they're looking at Naruto. Why is he just ignoring all of them? Looking at Naruto, who was grinning brightly while saying something to Hinata, she had another stray thought. And why is Naruto reacting to any of this either? I can tell Hinata's bothered by everyone's glares, but he doesn't even bat an eye. Instead, he seems like he can't be happier to just have someone listen to him talk about his village. Here we are. Naruto's loud exclamation shook Temari out of her thoughts. Looking around, she saw that they had arrived at some sort of ramen stand. Ichiraku's ramen, she muttered to herself, taking a look at their sign. Shaking her head, she followed after Naruto, who gestured for all of them to come inside. Upon entering, she was immediately hit by the strong smell of ramen cooking. While it wasn't her favorite food, she didn't mind it either, and the smell made her hungrier than she cared to admit. Taking a moment to try to see just what made this place so special to Naruto, she was slightly disappointed to see how small it was. With only a few tables and some chairs to sit at the bar, the restaurant definitely wasn't too popular. Adding on to that was the fact that there was no other customers here, even though it was only a little bit after lunch. Still, it is kinda nice how quaint it is. It has an almost homely feel to it. Hopefully the food is at least decent. Naruto, it's been a few days since we've seen you. Turning her head to behind the bar where the greeting had come from, Temari saw a young brown-haired girl in an apron giving them all a wide smile. From her uniform, it was obvious she worked there, although she was a little too young to be running the establishment all by her own. She watched as Naruto's own face broke out into a grin, and he gave his own greeting in return. Hey, I am. Sorry I haven't been around lately, but Hinata-chan has been making me lunch recently. I'm here now though, and I've brought some friends too. Upon hearing that Hinata had been cooking for him, Ayam gained a smirk and her saying, "Oh, really now?" Embarrassed from the attention, Hinata turned a bright red and tried to hide her face in her coat. Giggling at the girl's reaction, Ayam continued with a slight edge to her tone. Well, it might be less interesting without you around so often, but I have been telling you that you need to fix your diet. So as long as you're eating better and you still come around to see me and Dad every so often, I'll be satisfied. Ayam watched as Naruto nodded rapidly to her probing, probably part determined not to fully give up ramen and another part not wanting to be reintroduced to her ladle. Happy that he understood, Ayam turned her focus to her other guests that came with Naruto and Hinata. Her smile fell upon seeing their hiates, but she quickly put it back on. After a moment, she addressed them with a bow, saying, "Welcome to our humble establishment. Any friend of Naruto's is always welcome here." Turning to Naruto, she said, "Why don't all of you go ahead and get seated? I'm gonna talk to Dad real quick and then I'll come and take your orders." She waited until Naruto nodded with a grin and then excused herself to the back. Naruto led them over to a table and took a seat. Hinata shyly seated herself beside him, with everyone else taking the seats across from him. For a minute, there was an awkward silence as no one knew what to say. Deciding she would be the one to break the silence, Temari looked to Hinata and asked, "So, I heard that you know how to cook. I figured that you wouldn't do that since you're the heiress of the Hyuga clan and all." Surprised at being addressed by Temari, Hinata stuttered out a reply, "Why yes. I learned the basics from my mother before she passed, and I've continued to try and improve. I could just get another clan member to cook for me but I enjoy it and it helps me feel close to my mother." Temari's gaze softened at hearing Hinata's reasoning. Before she could reply, Naruto spoke up in admiration of her skills, saying, "Yeah, Hinata-chan's cooking is the best. I've only had it a few times so far, but each one was amazing." Hinata was embarrassed at having her cooking praised in front of other people like that. Letting out a squeak, she ducked her head and averted her eyes. Temari just giggled at her behavior and said, "Is that so? Well, maybe I'll have to try it sometime as well, just to make sure it lives up to such high praise." Attempting to calm herself, Hinata took a deep breath and slowly let it out. Looking back at Temari, she answered her in a small voice, I would be honored to see cook for you, Lady Temari." Turning her attention to Gaara and Kankuro, she said, "The same goes for both of you as well." Gaara nodded while Kankuro grew excited, saying, "Yes please. I can only take so much of Temari's cooking." Remembering something, he slouched down and muttered solemnly, "Man, why do all the cute babes have to be taken?" The rest of the people at the table heard it though. While Gaara merely ignored him, Naruto felt a sudden urge to punch Kankuro, which confused him since he didn't usually feel like that outside of a fight. Hinata had the most expressive reaction, however. Her eyes grew wide and she turned a deep shade of red, stuttering out, "BB babe?" Before she could inquire further, Temari smacked Kankuro upside the head. When he clutched his head in pain, Temari turned to Hinata and told her, "Don't pay this idiot any mind. His mouth works more often than his brain does." Hinata merely nodded, not trusting her voice to obey her. Seeing that Hinata was still a little embarrassed, Temari tried to divert her attention elsewhere by asking her a question. "So I've heard a little bit about Naruto's interest from when he was showing us around, but I don't know much about you. Why don't you tell me some stuff about yourself, Lady Hinata? What do you like to do on your free time, or what are your favorite foods?" Things like that. A little shy about talking about herself, Hinata chose to answer, not wanting to disappoint Temari or appear unfriendly. Please, just Hinata is fine. I like to take care of our garden and I press the flowers from it sometimes. I also try to spend time with my little sister, Hanabi, whenever possible. Why, you already know about how I enjoy cooking. But my favorite food is actually cinnamon rolls." Feeling emboldened, Hinata asked, "What about you, Lady Temari?" Temari smiled at seeing Hinata take initiative and said, "Well, if I'm going to be calling you Hinata, then just Temari is fine for me. Anyway, I spend a lot of my time training, but when I'm not, I usually enjoy reading a good book. I also like shopping, although usually it's more so for shinobi gear than regular girly things. As for food, I'm not a particularly picky eater, but I am somewhat partial to pancakes." Slightly more at ease from how approachable Temari was, Hinata nodded eagerly. "Oh, I enjoy our reading as well. I like to imagine myself in the world of whatever book I'm reading and feel like it's my own adventure." Chuckling at Hinata's enthusiasm, Temari glanced over to see her brothers and Naruto in their own lively conversation. It felt nice seeing the easy smiles that the three of them had and hearing the loud laughter of Kankuro and Naruto, or even the quiet chuckles of Gaara. Turning her attention back to Hinata, she began conversing with her once more, eager to learn more about her and the village she found herself in. Meanwhile, she was thinking this might not be so bad after all. Doorway to the Future. Part 3. The atmosphere around Ichiraku's ramen was livelier than it had been in a while. Although the establishment had been popular at its founding, after several years the buzz had died down. Add on to that the fact that it was one of the most frequented spots for the village pariah, you would be hard-pressed to find people lined up to take a seat. Despite this, Tucci still always cooked with a smile on his face. He had never really been strapped too hard for money, and the little business he did was enough to pay the bills. More important than that was the satisfaction he got out of a customer enjoying their meal. A customer's happiness always lifted his spirits, and the smile on one particular customer did that more than any other. The first time he had seen Naruto out in the rain, Tucci had been shocked beyond belief, though he didn't show it. He knew who his parents were with one look at Naruto's face and hair. Minato and Kushina were two of his most frequent customers back when he had first opened and usually came together. Those visits had slowed after Minato became Hokage and Kushina became pregnant, although Kushina still stopped by every so often and talked about how excited she was for her son to arrive. When the Kyuubi attacked, Tucci thought they had all been lost. With the announcement of both Minato and Kushina's deaths, he just assumed that the child hadn't made it either. He had heard whispers of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, but never paid them any mind since he had never laid eyes on him. When he saw Naruto and the state he was in, he felt like kicking himself for never investigating on his own. He was obviously malnourished and looked like he had been living on the streets from the condition his clothes were in. The fear in Naruto's eyes when Tucci looked at him spoke volumes about the treatment he had received as well. Eventually, Tucci was able to convince Naruto to come inside so he could feed him. The smile on Naruto's face when he had his first taste of Tucci's ramen was ingrained in the man's memory forever. Feeling determined to help Naruto, Tucci came up with a plan. After leaving Naruto to sleep at his house with his daughter looking after him, Tucci had went straight to the third Hokage for answers. He wasn't satisfied with most of the ones he got. Hiruzen had said that his parentage was kept a secret so that the village's enemies wouldn't target him. Tucci understood that point, but when he asked about why Naruto had to live in squalor like he was, Hiruzen lowered his hat in shame. He said that no one was supposed to know about Naruto's status as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, but it had leaked somehow. He was hoping that people would be able to differentiate between Naruto and the beast and wouldn't put all the blame on the child. Of course, when Tucci had argued and spoke of the state he found Naruto in, Hiruzen's anger and guilt grew in equal measure. Hiruzen confessed that he had put Naruto in an orphanage but wasn't aware that he had apparently been kicked out. His duties had kept him from making any visits to check on Naruto. Determined to fix his mistake, Hiruzen told Tucci that he would get Naruto his own apartment and provide him with a monthly stipend. He would also implement a law that prevented people from freely talking about Naruto's status as a Jinchuriki under penalty of death. That way, hopefully Naruto would be able to grow up with friends his own age who didn't know about his prisoner. Tucci didn't feel like that would be enough, however, and argued to be able to adopt Naruto. Hiruzen shot that idea down though, saying the council would never accept that. Naruto was a weapon in their eyes first and foremost, and leaving him in the hands of a civilian family might push him away from the life of a shinobi. Frustrated that he wasn't able to do more, and knowing that he wouldn't get anything else out of the third Hokage, Tucci went back to his home downcast. However, his spirits lifted when he saw his daughter and Naruto both curled up on the couch together. From that point on, Tucci was determined to help Naruto whenever possible. Over the years, Tucci had served Naruto meals whenever he came in, charging him as little as he could even if it hurt his business. He would also listen to Naruto's troubles and give him whatever advice he could. Ayame never seemed to mind. In fact, she looked to Naruto almost like a little brother, although they were both disheartened to see that Naruto always came in to eat alone. Every time they had hoped to see friends with him and were sad when he didn't. Eventually, his teacher did come and eat with him a few times, which brought a smile to Tucci and Ayame's faces. Still, it didn't replace the need for Naruto to have friends his own age. As the years passed, Tucci's hopes had fell that Naruto would ever be able to bring friends to eat with him. Now though, listening to the laughter coming from where they were sitting, even if it was mostly from Naruto, helped alleviate much of his fears. This was the second time in a row that Naruto had other people his own age come with him, and Tucci hoped it continued. After he finished cooking their food, he called for Ayame and helped her carry it out to them, wanting to see for himself just what kind of people had come with Naruto. As he followed Ayame and stepped out from the back, his gaze went towards where Naruto and his friends were seated. One of them was obviously the Hyuga girl that Ayame mentioned came with Naruto the other day. The rest were people he had never seen before. Ayam was slightly worried because she noticed they were Suna ninja and had brought it up to him. However, Tuchi merely waved her concerns away, stating that if they were with Naruto then it was fine. Besides, he was sure that the Hokage was already aware they were here and were probably being watched heavily. As he made his way over to them, their attention all turned towards him. He saw that the two boys were from Suna but was slightly surprised to see the blonde girl was wearing a Konoha Hayate. I wonder why she's wearing that, Tuchi thought, confused. She has some similarities to the other two boys and could be their sibling. Yet she supposedly works for Konoha. Shaking it off, Tuchi continued on to where Naruto was on the verge of drooling for his food. Chuckling, he started placing all the bowls he was holding in front of Naruto while Ayam passed out everyone else's. As more bowls were placed by Naruto, everyone's eyes grew wider, astonished by the amount of ramen Naruto was planning to eat. Well, everyone except Hinata. She had already seen how much ramen Naruto normally had and wasn't surprised by it. Instead, she pouted a little bit and looked like she might want to take one of his bowls for herself. Tuchi saw the Suna siblings' reactions and laughed. Ha ha ha. I guess none of you have ever been with Naruto to eat. He's always like this. It's why he's one of our best customers. When he said this, Naruto merely gave a sheepish look in response before starting to rapidly eat his ramen. Ayam sighed and said, it's true. As long as I've known Naruto, he's always ate this much. I try to get him to slow down, but it never sticks. She ended her rant with a little glare at Naruto, who was already starting on his second bowl. Naruto didn't notice her remark and continued on uninterrupted. Hinata giggled at his behavior while the siblings all blinked in unison at the display. Eventually, they snapped out of it and began eating their own food. As soon as they tasted it, their eyes widened and they started eating a faster pace. Tuchi laughed and Ayam grinned at seeing them enjoy the ramen so much. Haha! Anyone that enjoys my cooking is all right in my book, Tuchi exclaimed. Feel free to come back anytime you want. I'll have some more ready for you in no time. Nodding in response, Temari answered for herself and her siblings. Thank you very much for your hospitality. We'll definitely be back for some more of this amazing ramen. Naruto laughed, saying, see, I told you this place was the best. Sighing but letting a small smirk grace her face, Temari answered, okay, you were right. This place is pretty great. Naruto just smiled in response. Meanwhile, no one noticed that Hinata had snuck one of Naruto's bowls to her side after finishing her own. She didn't want everyone to think she was a pig if she ordered several for herself, but she was still hungry. So she figured if she just had one of Naruto's, well, where's the harm in that? The rest of the meal passed without a word from anyone else. As soon as he finished his last bowl, Naruto leaned back and patted his stomach, sighing out, ah, that always hits the spot. Looking around, he saw that everyone else was almost done with their meals as well, with the exception of Hinata, who had already finished and was staring at him intensely. Feeling nervous at her stare, Naruto was about to ask her what was wrong when she slowly took her finger and poked his stomach. Cheeks turning red at her actions, Naruto was caught off guard when she quietly mumbled, where does it all go? Unsure of how to answer her question, Naruto chuckled nervously and asked, well, what about you? Where do all those cinnamon rolls that you like so much go? Then, without thinking, Naruto poked Hinata back in her stomach, his fingers sinking it a little further than hers had. Feeling like lightning had just struck her, Hinata's face quickly burned in embarrassment at the actions of both herself and Naruto. Worried that Naruto might think she was fat, Hinata began stuttering, "Enen Naruto-kun, what are the two of you up to?" Temari's question snapped the two of them back to attention. Seeing that everyone's gaze was on them, Naruto and Hinata both quickly shouted out, "And nothing." Gaara and Kankuro both looked confused, but Temari's eyes narrowed on them. Hinata shrunk under the attention while Naruto rubbed the back of his head. "Well, since we're all finished, how about we go ahead and leave? I got a few more places I can probably show you around." Naruto finished his sentence with an awkward laugh that no one but Temari paid attention to. Deciding that she would just have to find out whatever was wrong later, Temari agreed. "All right, I wouldn't mind seeing a few more of the sights. It would be nice to know where everything is after all." Breathing a sigh of relief, Naruto stood up and said, "Okay, how about you guys go wait outside while I pay?" Hinata was about to speak up in protest for Naruto paying when Tsuchi's voice caught their attention. "Don't worry about it today, Naruto. One of the Hokage's Umbu gave me money earlier saying that she was paying for your meals today." Surprised that she would do that, Naruto merely nodded and exited with the rest of the group. However, before they could get back to exploring any more of the village, Kat appeared in front of their group out of nowhere. Smirking beneath her mask at seeing them all jump slightly, she said, "The Lady Hokage has instructed me to bring you all to her at once. Please, follow me." Without giving them a chance to respond, she started walking away towards the part of the village where the Hyuga compound was located. Everyone silently looked at each other before acquiescing and following after the Umbu agent. As they passed by the entrance to the Hyuga compound, the entire party was silent on their walk. They knew were being guided to where Naruto and Temari's new house was going to be, but they weren't sure what to say. So they just settled for having an awkward silence and followed Kat as she guided them to an area of the village where very few people actually frequented. After a little bit more walking, they saw Tsunade along with Jiraiya and Baki waiting for them to arrive. Once they were in view, Kat tensed slightly but continued to lead them towards Tsunade. Stopping in front of Tsunade, Kat bowed and said, "I've brought them just as you requested, Lady Hokage." Nodding, Tsunade waved her hand and answered, "Very good. I'll handle it from here. You can return to your duties." Kat nodded and vanished without another word. Turning towards Naruto's group, she saw that the girls and Naruto were slightly nervous. Trying to calm them somewhat, she put on a small smile and said, "Why don't we go ahead and get started?" Gesturing for them to start following her, she started walking ahead while Jiraiya and Baki brought up the rear. Anyway, as I've said before, the Namikaze compound is located out this way. While it's never been used, it's still in decent condition and can be brought up to code without too much effort. There's also plenty of extra space out here for an Uzumaki compound to be built in the future. Of course, it will be a few years before either of those things happen since we don't want word to get out prematurely of a revived Uzumaki clan and emergence of a Namikaze clan. Casting a glance back to see that they were all paying attention, she continued after a moment, "Still, we figured it's best to have your new house built out here anyway. It wouldn't do much good to have you somewhere else just to move you again in a few years. Besides, the compounds are more of a thing for the future generations anyway. The three of you will likely continue to live in your new house for most of your lives, especially after you get a good look at it." Letting that sink in, Tsunade turned a corner that would lead them directly to the house. As soon as the rest of the group did as well, she heard several gasps behind her. Smirking slightly, she gestured towards the brand new building. Looking back at them, she said, "Welcome to your new home." It was an impressive sight. While it wasn't big enough to be called a mansion, it wasn't very far off either. It was wider than most other houses in the village and seemed to have a second level as well. The house was painted the same shade of red as the Uzumaki swirl on Konoha jackets, although it didn't have many other details at the moment. The surrounding area wasn't anything to scoff at either. There was a wide clearing in front of the house that would provide plenty of space for an entranceway or garden or anything else they desired. There were also a good many trees to the sides that provided decent privacy from the rest of the village. Although the walls of the Hyuga compound were close, they were at least far enough away to where it wouldn't be cramped or they would be able to constantly hear each other's business. Behind the house lay another large clearing, one that would perhaps be fit for a training area in the future. Could possibly even fit in something like a pool and seemed like there might be ground already cleared for it. No one missed the Namikaze compound that was located in the distance either along with the wide open area next to it where the Uzumaki compound would presumably go. They were far away enough to not crowd the house and the clearing behind it, but close enough to where it would be an easy walk. Turning back towards the group, Tsunade gauged their reactions. Baki and Kankuro both held impressed looks while Gaara was still his stoic self, although he did give a nod of approval. To her dismay, Jiraiya was back to scribbling in his book and giggling all the while. Still, from the glances he kept making towards the Namikaze compound, he obviously had something else on his mind as well. Besides, the other three's reactions were the most important to her anyway. Temari kept her expression guarded, although Tsunade could tell from the surprise in her eyes that she didn't expect to get such a grand house. From the way her eyes flicked around to different areas also gave away the idea that she might be making plans for the future. Naruto's jaw had dropped and Tsunade was surprised to actually see him speechless. His eyes held a sense of wonder, like he couldn't believe that he was going to be allowed to live in this house. Looking at the final person in their group, Tsunade was shocked to find Hinata softly crying. Hinata was gazing up at the house with sparkles in her eyes and tear streaks marring her red cheeks. She let out a quiet sniffle which got the attention of both Naruto and Temari. Panicking slightly at seeing Hinata cry, Naruto asked her, "What's wrong, Hinata-chan?" However, Hinata shook her head and looked at Naruto with adoration, saying, "Nothing's wrong, Naruto-kun. I just think that the house is perfect." She wanted to say more but didn't have the courage to admit it at the moment. So instead she settled for saying it in her own head. "This is the place where we'll build our family together. Me, Naruto-kun, and Temari. We'll make so many happy memories here, and I can finally give Naruto-kun the life he deserves." Naruto was closer to her thoughts than she realized, though. With a big grin, he pulled her close and exclaimed, "You think so too, Hinata-chan? It's gonna be great. Just you, me, and Temari. Like one big happy family." Hinata had to struggle not to faint from his close proximity and his words. Meanwhile, Temari had her own cheeks dusted pink and turned her head to mutter out something in embarrassment. Tsunade smirked but chose to save them from any more embarrassment and said, "All right, lover boy, you can stop flirting now." She watched with satisfaction as he seemed to realize what he had just done and quickly let go of Hinata, muttering out an apology with a blush on his own face. Satisfied that they were pleased with what they saw, she continued, "As you can see, a good deal of time and energy was put into constructing your house. Of course, we had some shinobi working that made it easier, but the project still ended up being more of a hassle than we first realized. That's partly why the outside is so bare bones right now, although I'm sure that you all will be able to change it to your liking at a later point." Hinata nodded her head rapidly, thoughts already flying of different areas she could plant flowers. Temari grinned in response, her own mind on the idea of a personalized training area. Meanwhile, Naruto seemed content to allow the two of them to figure out what they wanted, not having any personal wishes of his own. "If there's anything you would like done, you can put in a request to me or Shizune and we'll see what we can do. I'll also be fronting the costs for what you need for now as well, since you don't have access to Minato or Kushina's accounts until Naruto turns 16. Once he does get access though, you'll have to repay me for anything extra from this point on, so try not to go crazy with it. I don't want to have to explain why I'm diverting extra funds this way after all." The three of them nodded and thanked her. Waving off their concern, she said, "You're welcome, brats. It's the least I could do for the situation you're all in. Now why don't I show you around the inside?" Walking towards the front of the house, she opened the door and ushered them all inside. As soon as they all stepped inside, everyone let out a gasp or whisper of amazement. Everyone except for Naruto. When Naruto entered, he had a sense of déjà vu. He was wondering where he had seen this design before, and then it hit him. "This is just like the house from my dream earlier." With that thought, Naruto quickly became embarrassed, remembering all the other stuff in his dream that came along with it. Shaking his head quickly, he forced himself to focus on the other aspects of the house to compare. "It's huge, just like the house in my dream was. It's not as decorated and the walls are a different color, but we haven't even moved in yet. Everything else is in the exact same place, from the kitchen to the stairs. How could I have seen this house in a dream when I'm only just now seeing it for the first time?" Noticing the other people around him taking the time to walk around and explore, he decided to follow their lead and have a look around himself. The entrance led into a huge living room that had a few couches and a table in the center. There was also plenty of space to add extra amenities if they desired to do so in the future. On the other side of the room was the kitchen that seemed to have all the latest kitchen accessories, along with a large countertop that had enough space to be able to cook comfortably. Naruto caught a few glimpses of Hinata staring starry-eyed at the kitchen and everything in it. Beside the kitchen was a dining room that contained a large table. It had 12 chairs around it currently, but seemed like it could also be possible to add more. Naruto continued to look around the bottom floor for a little bit longer with everyone else. They found a few doors that led to more rooms, but they were all empty when opened. Tsunade explained that there were several rooms left empty on purpose so they could repurpose them as they saw fit. A few suggestions were thrown around, such as an office or a recreational room or even just a plain storage room. When everyone had finished exploring the main floor, they all gathered in front of the stairs to explore upstairs. Leading the way, Tsunade began to speak as they started ascending. So up here lies all the bedrooms and bathrooms along with a few storage closets. From what I saw in the plans, there should be a total of 5 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, not including the master bedroom and bath. They all reached the top and began to glance around while Tsunade continued. It might be a bit much, but it's better to be on the safe side since we don't know how many kids you'll end up having. Tsunade finished with a grin and glanced back at them to gauge their reactions. She wasn't disappointed with what she saw either. Naruto and Temari were both blushing a bright red and having difficulty saying anything. Meanwhile, Hinata, the poor girl, was on the verge of passing out and was holding on to Naruto in order to stay standing. Chuckling slightly, Tsunade guided them towards the master bedroom. Opening the door, they were all shocked at the sheer size of it. The room was wide and had openings on both sides of it. A lot of the space in the middle was taken up by one of the largest beds most of them had ever seen, but there was still enough free space for the room to not feel too cramped. There were a couple of nightstands on each side of the bed along with some dressers along the wall. This bedroom had to be custom designed, seeing as how most master bedrooms are made for only 2 people. That of course includes the bed, which had to be made by special order, Tsunade explained. I think it all turned out pretty well though, if I do say so myself. Upon seeing the bed and hearing Tsunade's explanation, Hinata's mind began working on overdrive. With a faraway look on her face and cheeks turning redder by the moment, Hinata finally couldn't take it anymore and fell backwards with a line of blood coming out her nose. "Ah, Hinata-chan!" With Naruto's cry, everyone burst out laughing at the situation, although Temari was mostly joining along to try and hide her own blush. Naruto of course tried to get everyone to cut it out and help Hinata, who by that point had started making strange giggling noises that unnerved him. That only made everyone else laugh harder and Jiraiya to begin his own giggling and scribbling in his book. After a couple of minutes, Hinata woke back up and shot up, seeing everyone staring at her. She quietly apologized to everyone for the trouble, but they all just waved it off. Changing focus, they all went over to one of the openings in the room and looked inside to see it was a giant walk-in closet. Inside there was a large amount of space for clothes to be hung as well as a washing machine and dryer. Temari was very excited that they would have such a large closet, although she tried not to let it show too much. The pleased expression and grin threatening to burst gave away her true feelings to her brother and sensei though. Unaware of her inner thoughts, Tsunade began to speak. "As you can tell, this is your closet. It's bigger than most, but with 3 of you it will most likely be needed. Not to mention that since you'll all be a major factor in the alliance as well as heads of 2 clans, there will be a lot of important meetings you'll all have to attend, which means plenty of formal wear and appropriate attire needed." At the mention of meetings, Naruto let out a loud groan, causing Kankuro to snicker at his misfortune. Hinata merely rubbed his back in consolation, while Temari slapped the back of Kankuro's head, shutting him up. Walking over to the opposite side of the bedroom, they entered the other opening to see the master bath. Inside there was a long countertop that held 3 sinks along with a mirror above each one. There were also several cabinets and drawers located both above and below. A toilet was also located over in the corner. Of course, the main attractions were the shower and bathtub, both of which were larger than average. They had obviously been designed to fit 3 people comfortably instead of 1 or 2 and had the size to show for it. After everyone looked around a little more, and some more teasing was thrown at Naruto and his future wives, they all left the bedroom and gathered back outside the room. They took a moment to look at one of the other bedrooms along with a bathroom, although they were more along the lines of a standard house. Once it seemed like everyone had gotten a good look at the house, Tsunade got them all together and asked, "Well, what do you all think of the house?" Naruto was the first to answer, excitedly exclaiming, "It's great, Lady Bachan. It's so huge and has all kind of space. I'm so glad that you did all this for us." Tsunade smiled at his enthusiastic answer and patted his head, saying, "No problem, brat." Hinata nodded her agreement, although she was much more subdued with her answer. I think it's wonderful as well, Lady Tsunade." Bowing her head, She stammered out, "Titi, thank you very much." Temari bowed as well, saying, "I thank you as well, Lady Hokage. This house is much more than I could have ever hoped for when I came to your village." Waving them off, Tsunade replied, "Nonsense. You're all giving up your freedom for the future of our two villages, so the least we could do was give you a place that you could call home. Honestly, it's not near enough in my opinion, but I'm glad you all like it nonetheless." Chuckling at seeing them all smile, Tsunade started making her way back towards the exit and said, "Well, I've got to get going now since I still have a lot of work left to do. Take this time to keep looking around though and get familiar with your new home. You'll be living here from now on after all." Pausing a moment as she thought of something, Tsunade then addressed Naruto. "By the way, I took the liberty of getting the Umbu to collect the stuff from your old apartment, Naruto. They should be here in a little while with everything, although I'll leave the space free for a few days, so you can go back and check to make sure they didn't miss anything." Seeing Naruto nod that he understood, Tsunade left the house. Jiraiya quickly followed after her, although not before sending a wink towards Naruto. With their exit, the house became a lot quieter and everyone shuffled around awkwardly. Taking the initiative, Baki spoke up and said, "I should get going as well. I still need to secure lodging for the rest of us. Gaara, Kankuro, come along with me." They nodded and began to follow Baki after saying a quick goodbye. Before they could get too far though, Naruto interjected saying, "Wait, why don't you all just stay here tonight? We've got plenty of space and I'm sure Temari would like to stay close to her siblings." Gaara and Kankuro were slightly surprised by the invitation, although based on the grateful look Temari threw Naruto's way, it was the right thing to do. Gaara and Kankuro looked towards Baki to see what he would say. "I'm afraid I'll have to decline myself. I would prefer just to stay at a hotel in the meantime," Baki replied. "However, if Gaara and Kankuro wish to stay here, then that's fine with me." Seeing the two of them nod, he continued, "Very well. I must thank you for offering them lodging. I'll meet up with you all again at some point tomorrow. Until then, good night." With that farewell, Baki left, leaving the 5 young shinobi inside the house. Temari turned towards Naruto and bowed, slightly saying, "Thank you for allowing my brothers to stay. It means a lot to me." Naruto just waved off her concern, however, and replied, "Don't worry about it. This is your house too after all, so you have just as much say as what can happen around here." Looking over at Hinata, his face turned slightly pink and he nervously asked, What about you, Hinata-chan? Do you want to stay here tonight too?" Embarrassed by the question, Hinata blushed pretty fast. To her immense disappointment, though, she had to shake her head and decline. "I am sorry, Naruto-kun, but I can't. And my father is expecting me back pretty soon, so I must go. Maybe sometime in the future." Upset by the information but understanding why she couldn't, Naruto nodded his head and said with a small smile, "Okay, Hinata-chan. I'll see you tomorrow for more training then." Shyly nodding, Hinata turned to the Suna siblings and offered a small bow, saying, It was nice to meet you all. I hope we continue to get along." Temari smiled and bowed back, speaking for her siblings. "Thank you, Hinata. You were a pleasure to meet as well. I'm sure we'll get along just fine." Hinata stood up from her bow and smiled brightly. Then, after a moment of hesitation, she quickly ran forward and encircled her arms around Naruto, giving him a hug. He was surprised at her forwardness at first, but quickly got over it and hugged her back. She let out an eep and let go before she could faint. Face burning, she spoke out a quick goodbye and then rapidly ran out the front door. Naruto, Temari, and Kankuro all chuckled at her behavior while Gaara showed a small smile. Looking around at each other, Temari spoke up, "Well, I guess we should go ahead and divide up rooms." Gaara shook his head though, saying, "No, this is your house along with Naruto's sister. You two should decide what you want and we'll take whatever is left." Kankuro nodded, showing he agreed with Gaara's logic. Sighing at her brother's insistence, Temari looked at Naruto to see what he wanted to do. However, he just smiled and said, "Why don't you take the master bedroom, Temari? I'm sure you can use the space more than I can, and I doubt either one of us would feel comfortable sharing a room right now. I'll be perfectly fine with one of the other rooms." Temari was shocked that he would give up the best room in the house for her. Not wanting him to regret it, she asked him, "Are you sure?" I wouldn't mind just using one of the other rooms. Naruto nodded his head though, saying, I'm sure. To be honest, I wouldn't really know what to do with such a big room anyway. The one I have in my apartment is even smaller than any of the guest bedrooms. Besides, you're probably more used to a bigger bedroom since you were the Kazakage's daughter and all. She wanted to say that the master bedroom here was almost twice as big as the one at her own home, and she wasn't used to it either. Instead, she merely settled for smiling and offering her thanks. Turning towards the bedroom, she said, I should go ahead and get started on unpacking then. I'll see you all in the morning. With that, she entered the room and closed the door behind her. The three boys then walked towards the other rooms to start dividing them up. Once they decided where they would all sleep, Naruto started heading towards the one he got. Before he could leave though, he was stopped by Kankuro. Raising an eyebrow, he looked at them to see why they stopped him. Kankuro sighed before answering the unspoken question. Listen, we just wanted to tell you that tomorrow is Temari's 16th birthday. I know you probably didn't know, but we felt that you deserved to know seeing your part in this whole arrangement. Naruto blinked in surprise before answering. Really? That's surprising that she had to move her right on her birthday. What are you all doing tomorrow for it then? Kankuro just shrugged and said, Not much since we weren't really able to set anything up being here and all. Temari said she was just fine with training like normal, although we'll probably still try to find a way to celebrate it. Nodding to show he understood, Naruto said, Okay. Thanks for telling me. If you need any help then you can always ask me. Gaara and Kankuro both nodded and replied their thanks. They all then entered their rooms to settle down for the night. Naruto looked around and felt overwhelmed by all the extra space he had. He knew that his stuff would take up a little more space once the Umbu agent arrived with all of it, but it wasn't that much. In the meantime, standing in an unfamiliar empty room with all the quiet around him made Naruto feel the same familiar sense of loneliness he always did. It only lasted a moment though, before he heard something crashing in the room Kankuro was staying in, followed by a loud curse which brought on Temari's own yell for him to keep it down. That exchange brought a smile to Naruto's face though, lending him a sense of ease he hadn't felt so far. That's right. I'm not alone anymore. Over at the Hyuga compound, Hinata had just arrived from their new house. She had calmed down because of the run over, but her heart still felt like racing. I can't believe I hugged Naruto-kun in front of Temari and her siblings, she thought to herself in embarrassment. Still, it did feel nice. Making her way over to where her father's office was located, she stopped right outside the door. Growing nervous at having to inform him that Temari was here now, she stood frozen trying to gather the courage to enter. Bracing herself, she slowly brought her hand up and softly knocked on the door. Enter. Hayashi's voice cut through the silence and Hinata took a deep breath before slowly opening the door. She saw him sitting at his desk, writing on some documents. Shuffling in, she softly closed the door behind her and stood silently before him. Without looking up from his work, he addressed her, Yes, daughter? What is it? Gulping a little bit, Hinata started speaking, trying to control her stutter as much as she could. I was just coming to inform you that Temari and her B-brothers have arrived in the village. Emmy and Naruto-kun met them for a meeting at Lady Tsunade's office, and then as she showed us our new house. Hayashi paused his writing to digest the information he just told her. After a moment, he started writing again and said, Very good. And the house? Was it to your liking? Blushing at the question, Hinata shyly nodded her head. Why yes, father. The H house was very nice and will serve our purposes well for the future. Pleased at the information, Hayashi responded, Good. It's nice to know the Hokage is taking this deal so seriously. I'll leave you to continue your duties then as long as you conduct yourself in a manner that reflects well on the Hyuga. Hinata nodded, showing she understood, and started to leave. Hayashi called her name once again before she could finish, however. Looking at her for the first time since she entered, he stoically said, Hinata, I would like to meet with both Naruto Uzumaki and Temari Sabaku sometime. Bring them here sometime in the next few days so I can have a talk with them. Hinata nodded nervously, saying, Why yes, father. Satisfied, Hayashi returned to his work and dismissed her. Hinata quickly left the room and let out a big sigh as soon as the door was closed again. I'm glad that's done with, but now father wants to meet with Naruto-kun and Temari. I hope nothing bad comes from it. With those worries rattling around in her brain, Hinata retired to her room wishing not for the first time that she was able to stay with Naruto in their new house. Temari was laying in her new room staring up at the ceiling. It had been a few hours after she had finished unpacking and decided to look around the bedroom some more. She was able to find a nice hiding spot for both her plushies and book collection but had felt overwhelmed after looking at everything else. So in the end, she had just ended up taking a shower and then flopping on the bed after changing into her sleeping clothes. Letting out what felt like her 100th sigh of the night, Temari spread out her arms and legs, but still couldn't feel the edge of the huge bed she was in. She was aware that the room was designed for three, but sitting here in the quiet of night by herself made it feel like it would just swallow her up. Just 1 week ago, she was in her own village seeking to be the strongest kunoichi of her generation. Now, here she is, sleeping her first night in a different village that's supposed to be her new home for the rest of her life. They had done their best to accommodate her, and Naruto and Hinata were nice enough, but it still felt like she was being sent to prison. A cushy prison, but a prison just the same. She had resolved to be strong though, both for herself and her village. Even if she felt like crying, she wouldn't let the tears fall. Instead, she would make the most of what she's been given and do her duty as a proud Suna shinobi. So, with her will set, Temari turned over and attempted to fall asleep, hoping for dreams of a happier future. Chapter 11, Elements of Surprise. Temari woke with a groan, stretching herself out under the covers of the bed she was in. Opening her eyes, she blinked them several times trying to adjust to the darkness in the room. Looking around, she was confused for a moment because of her surroundings. Where am I, she thought. Then everything came rushing back to her. That's right. I'm in Konoha now and this is my new house. Deciding to put those thoughts and the feelings they brought behind her for the moment, Temari got up and started to get dressed for the day. When she was satisfied with how she looked, she left her room and started slowly making her way downstairs, still somewhat unfamiliar with the new house's layout. As she approached the kitchen, the smell of bacon and eggs cooking caught her attention. Peeking inside, she saw that Kankuro was currently at the stove and preparing breakfast for them. Since she didn't have anything better to do at the moment, Temari sat down at the counter and greeted him. "Morning, Kankuro." Turning his head slightly to look at her, he replied, "Good morning to you too, sister. Happy birthday." Shifting his attention back to their meal, he said, "I woke up hungry, so I went ahead and came down here to see if there was anything to eat. I guess someone took the liberty to supply you with some basic groceries to start out with." "Oh right, it's my birthday today," Temari thought. Shrugging it off as nothing too important, she simply replied, "Thank you." Kankuro gave a brief smile and continued his cooking. With that, a silence befell the room, only interrupted by the sizzling of the pan. Temari didn't let it bother her, but Kankuro had questions and didn't want to wait to have them answered. Racking his brain for a way to talk about her situation, Kankuro slowly started to speak. "So, what do you think of all this?" At Temari's confused expression, Kankuro gestured to the house around them. Understanding what he was asking, Temari took her time to reply. "It still doesn't feel real, honestly. I mean, we just got here and then they drop one of the biggest secrets imaginable on top of us and let us walk away with that information. Then they come and show us this house that's practically a mansion and say that it's ours now. I know that we couldn't be treated too poorly for this alliance to work, but this all seems over the top." Nodding his head, Kankuro spoke up with his own thoughts. "I get what you mean. All of this was way more than I expected. I still have trouble believing that Shrimp is the son of the fourth Hokage. I see the resemblance, but I just can't wrap my head around it. Honestly, I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop." Temari thought about what Kankuro said and remembered the events of yesterday. Knowing that something was amiss, she brought it up to him. "Now that you mention it, maybe they're not being as lenient on us as we think." Seeing Kankuro give her a go-on gesture, she continued, "While we were walking around yesterday, I know that you noticed all the looks we were given. Almost like everyone would jump all over us at the first sign of a mistake." Scratching his head, Kankuro answered, "Yeah, I saw them. I was surprised by just how many there were though. I knew not too many people would like our presents, but it seemed like practically everyone was out for us. Seeing that he was following her, she said, "So maybe that's the reason it all seemed too easy yesterday. They didn't feel the need to threaten us more than necessary because they knew that we, or me by extension, would have a hard enough time proving ourselves to the villagers. It's both a test and a punishment to see if we can turn around their line of thinking and show that we're being truthful about wanting this alliance." "Are you sure that's what's really going on, sis?" Kankuro asked skeptically. Temari rubbed the back of her head and sheepishly replied, "Well, not really. It's just a guess or a hunch I have." Kankuro deadpanned and let out a sigh at his sister's thoughts. Glancing at the food, he saw that it was all done cooking. He turned off the stove and began to divide it all up between 4 plates, giving himself the largest portion. Of course, his actions didn't go unnoticed, and Temari quickly got up and smacked him before more evenly dividing the food. Yelping, Kankuro shot Temari a glare which she replied to by sticking her tongue out at him. Mumbling something about bossy sisters, he took his plate over to the table and sat himself down with Temari following suit not long after. Beginning to chew his food absent-mindedly, Kankuro let his thoughts wander to the events of yesterday. Focusing on one thing in particular, he decided to bring it up to Temari and see what she thought about it. "Hey sis," he started. When she turned to him and gave him an inquisitive look, he continued, "What do you think was up with all those looks that people were giving Naruto yesterday? I mean, I know why people didn't like to see us, but what reason did they have to dislike him like that? He got almost as many glares as we did." Knowing what he meant by that, Temari looked down in contemplation. As she recalled the way the villagers glared at Naruto, her face morphed into a tight grimace. For some reason, it bothered her more than when they had just glared at her. Shaking it off before she could follow that line of reasoning, she gave her attention back to Kankuro. "I'm not sure why they dislike him so much. All the research I did on him before we came here didn't tell me anything about it. All it mentioned was that he was viewed as a dead last failure and that he pulled pranks on people occasionally. Neither of those would get him to be hated by so many people though." Temari paused for a moment, hesitating on what she wanted to say next. After a moment, she decided to give voice to her thoughts. "Honestly, the way they look at him almost reminds me of the way people in our village look at Gaara." Seeing Kankuro's surprised expression, Temari tried to explain what she meant. "It's not the same, obviously. The people in Suna show mostly fear to Gaara, while here they mostly only show disdain or loathing. Still, it's eerie how similar they are, both ostracized by their villages." It's almost like whatever Temari was going to say was interrupted by the loud sounds of footsteps coming down the staircase. Looking towards it, they saw Naruto quickly descending with Gaara following behind at a more normal pace. Bounding towards them, Naruto greeted them with a wide grin and a wave. "Morning, guys. I didn't know you would all be up, but when I smelled the food, I just knew I had to come and see for myself." Appearing a moments later, Gaara nodded his agreement to Naruto's words. Looking at his siblings, he chose to offer them a greeting. "Good morning, brother, sister. I hope you do not mind if Naruto joins us for breakfast." Kankuro just waved off his concerns though, saying, "It's fine. I figured he would be joining us anyway, so I fixed him a plate too. It came out of their refrigerator anyway, so it's kind of his food to start with." Temari voiced her thoughts as well. "Of course he's welcome to eat with us, Gaara." Turning her attention to Naruto, she addressed him directly. "Please take a seat. It might not be a 5-star meal, but it should be edible enough. At least that's what we hope for whenever Kankuro is cooking." Ignoring Kankuro's shouts of protest, she gave Naruto a warm smile which brought a blush to his face. His hand quickly shot up to the back of his neck to rub it, and he awkwardly laughed, saying, "Oh, well, thank you, Temari. I would be happy to eat with all of you." Chuckling at his sudden bashfulness, she went to get his and Gaara's plates from the kitchen. While she was turned, she didn't notice the glances that Kankuro was giving to Naruto, whose eyes lit up in remembrance. When she came back, she set the plates in front of both, and they gave her a smile in return. Naruto spoke up for both of them, saying, "Thanks, Temari. By the way, I just wanted to say happy birthday to you. Your brothers told me that today was your 16th birthday, which is pretty awesome." Slightly surprised at him being told of her birthday, Temari flushed slightly red and stuttered out, "Thank you, Naruto. I appreciate your kind words. Naruto beamed at her response and went to quickly devour his food. Gaara gave her his own greeting for her birthday, which she accepted with a soft smile on her face after her face cooled back down. With that, Gaara went to eating his own breakfast, leaving Temari to her own thoughts. Why did it feel different when Naruto wished me a happy birthday? She thought in confusion. It wasn't like he did anything special, and yet my heart skipped in a way that didn't happen when my brothers did the same thing. Her line of thinking was interrupted, however, when a shout got her attention. Tensing slightly, she looked over to see Naruto arguing with Kankuro about something. From what little she heard, it seemed like Naruto was saying that ramen would have been better for breakfast, while Kankuro shot back that they just had it yesterday. Meanwhile, Gaara was watching them with his typical silence and blank face. Temari chuckled to herself at the scene. Well, as far as birthdays go, this isn't so bad a start to one, I suppose. With that, she leaned back to watch the rest of the chaotic breakfast, feeling a sense of ease she hadn't felt in a while despite the loud atmosphere. After breakfast was finished, the four of them got ready and left the house. Naruto took it upon himself to show them the way to Training Ground 7, where they would be allowed to train with him. As they walked, Naruto spent the time asking about how they trained and if they had learned anything new since the Chunin exams. Kankuro was slightly guarded with the responses he gave, but Temari and Gaara answered to the best of their ability. Arriving at the training ground, they were greeted by the sound of flesh hitting wood. Investigating the source of the noise, they found Hinata practicing her taijutsu on a training post. When she saw them approaching her, her movements came to a stop, and she turned to greet them with a shy smile. Good morning, everyone," she said with a bow, face still flushed red, although it wasn't completely from exertion. "Hinata-chan." Naruto greeted her back with a grin and a wave. "I'm glad you were able to come train with us today. It's always more fun to train whenever you're here with me." Hinata burned brighter at his words, but Temari began speaking to her before she could get lost in her fantasy. "It's nice to see that you're here as well. I must admit, it puts me more at ease to have someone besides just Naruto that we're familiar with. Plus, I've always wanted to spar with a Hyuga, and that desire only grew after seeing that cousin of yours fight in the final exam." Gaara and Kankuro both nodded, agreeing with Temari's assessment. Hinata poked her fingers together, stuttering out an answer. "Oh well, thank you, but I am nowhere near as talented as Niji. However, I will try to live up to your expectations to the best of my ability." Naruto interjected with his own opinion though. "Don't listen to what she's saying. Hinata-chan is awesome. She always gives me a hard time whenever we spar. She's such a cool shinobi." Blushing in embarrassment at his praise, Hinata ducked her head into the collar of her coat, trying to hide her face. Temari chuckled at the action, and before she knew it, her hand reached out to pat Hinata on top of her head. Hinata was bewildered by her action and looked up to Temari with a confused expression. Just now realizing what she was doing, Temari quickly drew her hand back and looked to the side awkwardly. Coughing slightly, she spoke up and asked, "So, you said this was your team's training ground, right, Naruto? Then why is Hinata here, and where is the rest of your team?" "Oh, well, Hinata-chan has been training with me whenever she has time for the past week or so," Naruto said, answering her first question. Although, now that you mention it, Naruto started turning his head around to find any glance of his teammates. "I don't see them anywhere." Naruto-kun," Hinata quietly spoke up. I was the first one here, and no one else has shown up yet. I haven't been here for very long though, so I think you might just be early." Naruto blinked in confusion before looking up towards the sky. Noticing that the sun was a bit lower than it normally was when he went to train, he scratched the side of his cheek and admitted, I guess I am. Maybe sleeping in a new place messed with my sense of time." Tilting her head to the side, Hinata put a finger to her chin before replying, "That could be possible. Were the room and bed at least comfortable, Naruto-kun?" Throwing his hands behind his head and with a wide grin, he eagerly said, "Oh yeah, the room was almost bigger than my whole apartment, and the mattress was 1,000 times better than my old ratty one." Hinata frowned at the admission of how he was living before, but decided not to bring it up now and ruin the mood. Instead, she decided to address Temari and her siblings instead. What about all of you? Did you have a nice sleep last night? Gaara merely nodded his approval, while Kankuro waved his hand around and said, "It was all right," though from the way he turned his head when he replied gave away that it was probably better than his words let on. Temari gave a small smile in return and answered, "It was nice, but I had a hard time falling asleep." Seeing Hinata give her an understanding look, she continued, "I think the bed might have been a little big for just me. It might take a while to get used to." Naruto and her brothers nodded in understanding, but Hinata started to slowly turn more crimson from her reply. Knowing how her words could be misconstrued, Temari looked away slightly embarrassed with a small blush as well. Faking a slight cough, she tried to change the topic to something else before any of the boys caught on. "So, anyway, what kind of training have the two of you been doing lately?" Taking the bait, Naruto was proud to declare what they had been working on. "I've been trying to master this super cool new jutsu." He quickly took out a shuriken from his pouch and faced one of the training posts that was a little farther away. Taking a moment to line up his shot, he threw it with force towards the post and then did some hand signs. Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. Immediately after, the single shuriken multiplied into 4 and each embedded itself in the wood. Nodding to himself, Naruto turned to the group and broke out into a grin. "Pretty cool, right? Kakashi-sensei said it was one of Old Man Third's jutsus and taught it to me." Turning a little sheepish, he added, "Although Kakashi-sensei said that Old Man Third was able to make a dozen from each one, while I've only been able to do up to 5. Hinata gave Naruto a pleased look, but didn't say anything since she had already seen him practice the jutsu a lot. Kankuro just gave him a thumbs up but didn't seem too impressed otherwise, although Temari gave an approving nod. Gaara was the one who spoke up though, saying, "I see. It's a lot like my sand shuriken that I use sometimes." Naruto snapped his fingers. "That's right. I remember you using that before. I have to use real shurikens though since I can't manipulate sand like you." Kakashi-sensei said it was a good idea for me to have a move with more range to it. Gaara nodded, knowing that range was always a good option to have. Both him and his siblings were all lunge range specialists, so they had to have several techniques that allowed them to keep up the pressure while still staying a good distance away. Although, between the three of them, Temari had the most potential to be a mid-range fighter as well. Challenging herself to speak up a little more, Hinata decided to add in what she had been doing. Starting off in a quiet voice, she said, I've been working on perfecting my gentle fist. It's not much but I like to think I've made a little progress." She started to shrink in on herself a little more when everyone's attention turned to her, but Naruto quickly came to her rescue. Laughing a little bit, he exclaimed, "Yeah, Hinata-chan has been awesome. We've been sparring a whole bunch, and she beats me most of the time. She's even been trying to make her own form of taijutsu for herself." Hinata flushed from the praise and tried to bury herself in her jacket, but Kankuro and Gaara gained surprised looks from his words. Temari, meanwhile, thought it was an impressive undertaking and wanted to see it for herself. "Really? That's something pretty advanced for someone to attempt. I'd like to spar with you myself sometime and see how I stack up against it." Hinata wanted to deny it and say it wasn't a big deal, but she couldn't find the words. Instead, she decided just to nod and say, "Okay. We can do that sometime." Temari gave a smile in response and then turned to Naruto to ask him something as well. "That jutsu of yours was impressive as well. It wasn't anything flashy, but I can see it has several potential uses. Are you planning to add some elemental jutsu to it as well in the future?" Naruto merely tilted his head in response though and asked, "Huh, what do you mean?" Temari was confused by his expression and was about to speak up when a voice interrupted them. "Sasuke-kun, what are you going to work on today? I'll gladly help you however I can." Everybody turned their heads to the entrance of the training grounds where the voice was coming from and saw Sasuke and Sakura heading their way. From what they could tell, Sakura was talking his ear off about something while Sasuke was doing his best to ignore her. They both came to a halt when they noticed that there were other people in the training ground besides them. Sakura blinked for a moment, but once she registered who it was, she started to scream, "Ah! What are they doing here? Did they sneak into the village?" Sasuke didn't say anything, but it was clear he wasn't going to sit back and do nothing. Jumping back, He did the hand signs for his Chidori and let lightning chakra coat his hand. However, before he could run in and attack, Naruto ran in between the two groups and quickly tried to calm them down. Hold on Sakura, Sasuke. They're not our enemies. They have business with the village and I'm just showing them around some. His words didn't seem to placate Sakura and Sasuke much, though, since she was still trembling and Sasuke didn't drop his jutsu yet. Glancing back at the Sand siblings showed that they were on guard, though thankfully they hadn't brought out any weapons or tried molding chakra. Knowing they were still being watched by Umbu probably kept them from acting too hasty. Hinata's eyes kept flicking between the two groups, worried if things were going to escalate. Sakura was the one to break the silence, though, yelling out, "Naruto, what are you talking about? How can you trust them? Don't you remember what they did to our village? Not to mention what Gaara did to me and Sasuke." Her eyes shifted over to Gaara, and she couldn't suppress the shiver that went down her spine. She still remembered the manic look in them and the cold feeling of his sand squeezing her body. Gaara noticed her reaction but didn't say anything in defense of himself. Naruto merely shook his head, though, and countered, "Of course I didn't forget, but that doesn't mean that we must fight now. We've already settled all that, and that's why they're here now." Before Sakura could question what he meant, a poof of smoke next to Naruto caught everyone's attention. Once it cleared, Kakashi was standing next to them, holding onto his favorite book like always. "Yo, what's up?" he said with one hand raised in greeting. Like there wasn't so much tension you could cut it with a knife. Everyone blinked in confusion, before Sakura and Naruto both pointed at him in surprise and exclaimed, "What? You're on time for once." Kakashi's sweat dropped. "What do you mean? I always arrive at exactly the time I'm meant to," he said in a slightly guilty tone. "Besides, I had to make sure that one of my students didn't cause an international incident right after we just made peace," he thought to himself with a quick glance to Sasuke, who slowly dropped his jutsu when he realized Kakashi was watching him. Naruto and Sakura merely gave him blank looks in return. Hinata seemed to have a doubtful expression as well, even with just the little amount of time she had known him. Never mind that, Sakura started. Was Naruto telling the truth about them not being our enemies anymore and they're here on business? She finished her statement by pointing wildly at the Sand siblings, making it clear just who she was talking about. "That's right, although it's a little more complicated than that," Kakashi replied. With an eye smile, he cheerfully added, "Naruto was told to bring them here today, so that both of you can meet your new teammate." Sakura's jaw dropped open at that. Both her and Sasuke's gaze went to the siblings, and they both noticed that Temari was wearing a Konoha Hayate instead of the Suna one like her brothers. Temari just met their gaze with her own blank, unimpressed stare. Slowly turning her head back to Kakashi, who was still standing there with his cheerful attitude, Sakura decided to speak her mind. "Ha! What do you mean, new teammate? Why is she suddenly working for our village and getting put on our team?" Sasuke didn't speak up himself, but he nodded to show he wanted to know as well. Kakashi grew slightly more serious as he began to explain. "It's part of the deal for the peace talks. In addition to money and materials, as a show of good faith, Suna sent Temari here to become one of our shinobi. As one of their most promising up-and-coming shinobi, they hoped that her inclusion would show how serious they were about the treaty." Sakura nodded slowly to show that she was following along, so Kakashi continued, "After the deal was accepted, Lady Fifth assigned her to our team once she arrived here yesterday. After looking over the teams, it was decided that she would complement ours the best, and so here she is now." "I guess that makes sense, but how do we know that we can trust her?" Sakura questioned. "They already broke one alliance, so who's to say they won't do it again? Plus, you're telling us she's on our team, so we must trust her to watch our backs." Kankuro was about to yell back that it wouldn't happen, but Temari shut him up with a slap to the back of the head, although she was gritting her own teeth to keep from retorting herself. Naruto was going to speak up in her defense, but Kakashi put his hand up so he could handle it. "I understand your feelings, Sakura, but trust in your new Hokage. Temari is the late Kazekage's oldest child, and they wouldn't just send her here to be a sacrificial pawn. Not to mention, we've got all kinds of contingencies in place that you don't even know of. After all, they put her on my team, And you know how closely I watch all my precious students, don't you? He finished his speech with an eye smile and thumbs up that caused Sakura to snort, but she didn't argue any further. Seeing that she placated, Kakashi was ready to move on to what they were supposed to do today when Sasuke asked a question. So, what does the loser have to do with this? Sasuke pointed to Naruto to make it clear just who he was talking about, which caused a vein to appear in Naruto's head. He barked back, "Hey! Who are you calling a loser, you stuck-up bastard?" Sasuke merely smirked back but didn't reply to the taunt. Hinata, Temari, and Gaara all frowned at Sasuke's words, although Hinata's was much more downcast than the other two. Kakashi sighed before answering, "If you must know, the Hokage ordered Naruto to show them around the village yesterday and lead them to the training ground today. She also has him keeping watch over Temari for the time being." Temari turned her head to the side, angry that it sounded like she needed to be watched like a child. She didn't say anything though, knowing that they had to keep up the cover story for the time being. Sakura blinked at the admission, confused as to how Naruto got entrusted with such a job. However, Sasuke grit his teeth and asked, "Why him? What makes him so special?" Shrugging, Kakashi nonchalantly spoke his thoughts. "She seems to like Naruto. He did go on the mission with Lord Jiraiya to bring her back to the village and was instrumental in convincing her. She's taking his claims of becoming Hokage seriously and is giving him some responsibility to test him." Blushing slightly at the straightforward compliment, Naruto rubbed the back of his head and let out a slight chuckle while Hinata looked proudly at him. Sakura was in a state of disbelief that Naruto had somehow managed to get close to their new Hokage already, and she was even taking his wild ramblings about being Hokage seriously. "How is this happening?" Sasuke thought angrily. "What does he have that makes him so important? I don't get it. First, he gets trained by one of the Sannin, then Itachi wants him for some reason, and now even the Hokage is interested in him." Sasuke glared daggers at Naruto, as if the mystery would just unravel itself if he wanted it to. Kakashi saw his barely contained rage and sighed to himself. "Just one more thing to add onto the pile," he thought despondently. Clapping his hands to get everyone's attention, Kakashi spoke up, "Anyway, now that everyone is caught up, I'll start with what we're going to be working on today." Sakura's hand shot up immediately. "Kakashi-sensei, does that mean that they're all going to be staying here for our training?" she asked while pointing towards the siblings. Sighing at being interrupted already, Kakashi answered, "Yes, Sakura, they are. Since Temari is going to be on our team, it's necessary to get her acquainted with each of us and show her how training is going to go with us. Also, because her brothers are only here for a short while longer before they must leave, I'm sure they want to spend as much time with their sister as they can." Sakura nodded at his explanation, allowing him to continue. "Besides, I thought that their input could be useful for what I want to show today." Kakashi slowly started to reach behind his back for something, causing Naruto to begin vibrating in excitement, while everyone else leaned forward in anticipation, although Sasuke was hiding his own interest. "Today I'm going to teach you about chakra natures." He finished his exclamation with his hand in front of him, holding up several pieces of paper in it. Everyone just looked blankly at him, feeling a sense of disappointment washing over them. "Yeah, everybody except Naruto, that is. Glad to see you're all so excited," Kakashi said in his cheerful voice. "I'll be sure to answer each of your questions and give you all the guidance that you're surely yearning for." That seemed to snap everyone out of their funks. Sakura straightened up slightly, ready to learn even if it wasn't quite what she had in mind. Sasuke, of course, scowled, angry that it was something that he already knew. Hinata smiled, seemingly happy with the subject, though she was mostly looking at Naruto, who was still impatiently bouncing on his feet, ready to begin. Meanwhile, the Sand siblings looked on mostly in confusion. Temari hesitantly raised her hand before asking, not meaning to interrupt, but do they not already know about chakra natures? Were they not taught that in the academy? Kakashi merely smiled back underneath his mask and responded, "Sure they were. Learning about the 5 chakra natures and how they interact is a core part of the curriculum in the academy. However, most don't learn about their own nature or how to strengthen it until they become Chunin." Temari stared blankly at Kakashi, quashing the urge to facepalm. "This is what we lost to," she thought in exasperation. They allow their shinobi to become genin without even learning their own chakra nature. Naruto's voice cut in before she could spiral any further. Hey Kakashi-sensei, I thought there were only 4 chakra natures. This time she did facepalm. Along with Sakura, Kankuro started laughing too. There even seemed to be a disappointed sigh from Hinata, which was really telling. Kakashi's grin didn't drop once though. Instead, he asked, well Naruto, what do you think all the chakra natures are then? Naruto adopted a thinking pose before answering, Well Temari uses all of them cool wind attacks, so I know one is wind. Temari blushed at the unexpected compliment and ducked her head down to hide her smile. You use lightning for your Chidori and Sasuke uses fire for his fireball jutsu. So that's 2 more. Then Zabuza used a lot of different water jutsus too. Oh, Haku used ice too. Is that the 5th chakra nature? Kakashi-sensei. Chuckling at his thought process, Kakashi shook his head. No, that's not quite right Naruto. The last chakra nature is actually earth, not ice. So, the 5 natures are fire, lightning, wind, water, and earth. Tilting his head in confusion, Naruto asked, why was Haku able to use ice-style jutsu then? Simple, Kakashi said. Ice style is a combination of wind and water chakra. Each combination of the 5 basic chakra natures produces a new different chakra nature. However, it's not enough to simply know jutsu of 2 different natures. You must actually possess a dual chakra nature, which is incredibly rare and almost always passed down as a Kekkei Genkai. Wait, so I'm not going to be able to use cool ice jutsu? Naruto asked sadly. Nope. Not unless you're somehow related to the same clan Haku was, which is highly unlikely. Kakashi's response caused Naruto's enthusiasm to deflate, and he hunched over in disappointment. Everyone besides Sasuke chuckled in amusement, while Hinata went over to pat him on the back consolingly. Anyway, the method we're going to be using to determine your chakra nature is by using these. Kakashi waved around the same pieces of paper he pulled out earlier, causing Naruto to perk back up and look at them strangely. These are called chakra papers, and they react whenever someone puts chakra into them. He demonstrated by infusing his own chakra into one of the papers, causing it to crinkle. It reacts differently based on the chakra nature of the one using it. In this case, it crinkled because I have lightning chakra. If you have wind, it would tear, fire causes it to burn, water will become soaked, and earth will make it crumble to dust. Seeing that Naruto was becoming excited again, Kakashi decided to demonstrate something else before he got too impatient. Most of the time, the results are a straightforward answer. You use your chakra, the paper reacts, and you know your nature. However, there are sometimes special cases such as having a dual nature. Another one is when someone has a particularly strong nature which causes the chakra paper to react more violently. If you wouldn't mind, Temari, would you like to demonstrate? Kakashi asked, handing Temari one of the chakra papers. She nodded and took it, not surprised that he knew she had a strong nature that would prove his point. Holding it up to where they could all see it, she poured a little bit of her chakra into it and watched as it reacted. Instantly, the paper was sliced into pieces as if it was cut by several blades of wind. Dropping what was left of the paper onto the ground, Temari let a smug smirk appear on her face, proud of the strong affinity she had. Whoa, that's so awesome! Naruto was the first one to exclaim his excitement, of course. However, Hinata was giving her an odd look as well, and Sakura even looked impressed as well. Sasuke just had his scowl grow larger though. Normally, when someone has a wind affinity, the paper just gets a single tear in it, Kakashi said, continuing his lesson. However, since Temari's is one of the strongest seen in several years, it had a much more potent reaction. Pulling out a few more pieces of chakra paper, he cheerfully said, now we're going to determine each of your chakra natures. I already did this for Sasuke before the finals of the Chunin exams and found out his was lightning, so now it's your turn. Even if we don't do much with it now, it can be beneficial to know your nature so you can find jutsus that would fit you well. Sakura nodded, but Naruto turned to look at the Sand siblings instead. He had been curious ever since Temari showed off her affinity, so he asked them a question. Hey, Gaara, Kankuro, what are your natures? Kankuro was surprised to have been asked, but Gaara took it in stride. I have both wind and earth affinities, which combined to make the magnet-style transformation, Gaara answered. I inherited it from my father, although I've never trained it. Instead, I've always relied on my sand that I can manipulate due to being Shikaku's Jinchuriki. Naruto had stars in his eyes at Gaara's answer, amazed that he had a dual nature. That's so cool. Your sand is super strong, but imagine how much more you could do if you used your magnet style too. Gaara showed a small smile at Naruto's enthusiasm. I see. Maybe I will try that in the future. Grinning at his suggestion being taken seriously, Naruto looked at Kankuro next, who faltered slightly from the attention. He wasn't too much of a fan of revealing his techniques, but he decided he could let just a little bit slip, since this wasn't that important. I have wind too, although it's just an average one. I don't use it very much though, and mostly focus on my puppets. I would like to use it in conjunction with my puppets one day, but that's too advanced for me right now. Naruto thought it was neat that all three siblings had wind as their affinity, but figured it was mostly common since they were from the land of wind. Satisfied, he turned back to Kakashi, who was watching him with an eye smile. While I am glad you are actively seeking out information, Naruto, you did interrupt my lesson again. So as punishment, I'm going to have you go last. Hanging his head in depression, he replied, Ah, that's not fair. Sakura sent a smirk his way and took one of the chakra papers Kakashi was offering. Holding it in her hand, she infused a little bit of chakra and watched as it started to crumble. Earth affinity, Kakashi said, nodding to himself. Regarded as being the most defensive of all the natures, it can be very useful to support your teammates. Not the rarest, but not as common as fire nature is in the village. Smiling to herself, Sakura thought, sweet. One more thing that I can use to help Sasuke-kun. She started to daydream of scenarios of her saving Sasuke with her new affinity and the gratitude that he would feel for her. Eventually, she began to swoon and giggle to herself, causing everyone else to look at her strangely. Coughing to himself, Kakashi moved over towards Hinata and held out a piece of paper for her to take. She looked at him in confusion, however, not expecting herself to participate. You, Kakashi-sensei, are you sure you want me to take one? I mean I'm not your student, so you don't have to. Kakashi merely chuckled and patted the top of her head. It's fine, Hinata. Chakra paper isn't that expensive, and no harm can come from knowing your affinity. It will just give you a head start if you ever decide to train with it in the future. Seeing the logic in that reasoning, Hinata nodded and took one of the papers. Taking a deep breath, she began to pour chakra into it, but was surprised when it began to drip excessively. She quickly dropped it on the ground, not wanting the water to continue to cover her hand. Widening at the result, Kakashi spoke up. Water affinity. That's not what I was expecting, considering most Hyuga have fire chakra. Especially not one so strong. Hinata looked at her hand in shock, surprised that she had a water affinity. Glancing at everyone else, she saw that everyone besides Sasuke was shooting her impressed looks. Sakura even gave her a thumbs up and Temari nodded towards her. She was slightly embarrassed at the attention, but that only grew once Naruto shot towards her and grabbed her into a joyful hug. That's so awesome, Hinata-chan. You got a super strong nature, and it's even different from the rest of your family. Hinata had to concentrate very hard not to pass out from Naruto's sudden affection and exclamations. With a deep blush, she slowly turned her head to look back at Kakashi, who was looking at them in amusement. Heh, it's true that water is one of the rarer elements in the village. It's probably the rarest besides wind, honestly. That said, water is also widely considered the most versatile chakra nature to have. It has good uses for both offense and defense. Not to mention, it seems you have one of the highest water affinities I have ever seen. There are probably some people from the land of water that could compare to you, but from this village, the only person that I know could possibly surpass it would be the second Hokage. That statement got people's attention. The Sand siblings' eyes widened in shock while Sakura's jaw dropped. Hinata was in disbelief that she could have such a strong affinity. Is it true? Is it possible for me to be exceptional at anything? Am I not a failure? She was so lost in her thoughts that she didn't notice how Sasuke's fist clenched tight in frustration as he continued to stare at her chakra paper on the ground. Ah yeah, hearing that got me super pumped to find out my awesome affinity. Without waiting for a second, He let go of Hinata and jumped forward to grab one of the chakra papers. Kakashi decided he had waited long enough, so he let Naruto take it from him. I wonder what I'm going to get. Maybe it'll be water like Hinata, and we can both learn some cool jutsus. Fire would let me shoot some awesome fireballs though. Temari's great with her wind too, so I would be alright with that too. Knowing that he would get nowhere just speculating, he began to use his chakra on the piece of paper. However, he was confused when he saw the result he got. The paper tore in half to start with, like Kakashi said it would with wind. Immediately after that though, both halves burned to a crisp, which didn't happen with anyone else. The entire training ground grew eerily silent after watching Naruto's chakra paper react. Even Naruto himself didn't seem to know how to feel. All he could do was let the confusion show on his face. Ha!